Welcome back to It Tastes Like Burning. This Matt.
It's Jesse.
And if you ever have questions, concerns, comments, issues, statements, inquiries, or inquisitions, you can always reach out to us at ittasteslikeburningcast at gmail.com. You can find us on Twitter at ITLBcast and YouTube at It Tastes Like Burning Cast. And if you're feeling particularly interested or wanting the need to unload heavy amounts of cash, you can always support us on Patreon also.
Yeah.
And we'll reward you with stickers.
Yeah. Stickers are the key thing there. So we've got special guests tonight, and we've embarked on this journey of this weekend of debauchery. And and we've got Greg, Chief Atkinson, the as my wife says, the divine fire chief.
Funny story about me coming to Divine. Of course, you guys know my wife's military or whatever, and we were moving in the height of COVID from San Diego to San Antonio, and we were looking for a place. And as we were driving all over looking for a place, we kept passing this little town called Divine. And I said, you know how God works? That's where we're going to end up. She's like, it's not even spelled right, dummy. And she's like, it's Devind. I'm like, I know, but still, you know how God works. Well, this goes on for about a month. And finally, of course, getting the height of COVID, we were having trouble getting in places. Finally, my realtor calls me and he goes, hey, place just went on the market. It's a firefighter. He's moving to the north side of San Antonio. He's got to get this place on the market right now. It's on the south side. I said, okay, cool. Where's that? He says, it's in Divine. And I just start laughing. And my wife's like, okay, whatever, blah, blah, blah. We pulled in the driveway, and my wife was like, this is our house. And we hadn't even been inside yet. And sure enough, went inside, fell in love with it, and got there. But yeah, it all started with my wife telling me I was a dummy because it was spelt wrong, but I was still right. So.
Yeah. It's a good play on words.
Right? Yeah, it's a great play on words. It's actually named after the judge that helped found the town, but it's a great play on words. But hey, guys, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thank you for stepping out of the wild jungle and taking 12 seconds to try and see what it's like to get into the cell phone dead area.
I tell you what, I think you guys are going to have a lot more special guests. You start doing it at the hunting ranch. If we're able to come out to the hunting ranch, I think everybody's going to jump at the opportunity to be on here.
Yeah, it's
funny thing about that. I made a post on Facebook, I don't know, 3 weeks ago, whatever, and it's like, if you're a chief officer of a fire department anywhere, whatever, all you got to do is get to Medina, Texas, and we'll take care of the rest.
Yeah.
Not one single person reached out on that post.
No joke.
I was like, oh my God, you got to be kidding me. And it's short notice and whatever.
Sure.
But yeah, it's like, come on. I was a little bit gray in what I said, and I was like, do ranch things and hang out and fellowship, and maybe I may gave it too much of a religious connotation. The fellowship comment, but that's literally what it is.
It's absolutely.
We've had some other folks roll through here this weekend, and we've just hung out and decompressed a little bit, and I think that's kind of one of the topics for tonight, right? We talk about kind of the stress of what we do, and then the opportunity to just get away from it for a minute, because for all of us, it's crazy. We've had the most crazy week at our department that you could possibly imagine, right? If you don't follow our department, Granbury, on social media in Granbury, Texas, and you don't know what happened this last Sunday,
probably ought to go pull it up.
Probably ought to go figure it out.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna dive down that rabbit hole. That'll be a future episode.
But there's enough press you can find it on your own. So
yeah,
just go look.
whether you're in Austria or Australia, if you're anywhere in between those two, you might have known.
And oddly enough, we have listeners in Australia, so
there you go.
Maybe they'll put two and two together and get like 9. I don't know how that works down there when the thing goes backwards. But
you think the Australian have a different math system?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, maybe. And there's a kangaroo and a wallaby. I don't have a clue.
Though, you hit the nail on the head on talking about decompressing and letting the stresses of our jobs go. We have, and it's not just fire chief jobs, right? Like anybody in a leadership position, things get stressful. And if you can't learn to decompress sometimes, turn it off, get away, hang up the keys, and Matt, I know you and I have talked about this numerous times. It's about trusting your people. As leaders, sometimes we want to have our hands on everything because we want to help, and do. But the reality is we got to trust our people for us to be able to go, you know what? I'm walking away this weekend. You guys got it. So,
yeah, it's one of those micromanaging things. Like, if you don't trust your membership to be able to do their jobs and your officers to be able to do their jobs, then they either shouldn't be officers or you're holding on way too tight. And to think that you're going to be able to solve everything 24/7,
yep,
365, year after year, decade after decade, it won't. And all you're going to do is create a trail of tears for yourself or the organization.
yeah,
It's more than a trail of tears, because that concept of I've got to make all these decisions just perpetuates like this horrible downward trend to where nobody can ever do anything right.
Right.
yep,
Like, it doesn't matter if they do the most perfect thing, you're going to find the fault in it, and you're going to just latch onto that, and that's going to be the demise of that person and their decisions.
Well, and we talk about all the time, Divine Fire and Granbury Fire. We both believe very much in training and developing. Well, you can't do career development for people if you don't allow them to grow and be in charge and make decisions. I mean, how are they supposed to grow as firefighters and officers if we're the ones making all the choices and all the decisions? It doesn't work that way.
It doesn't.
Yeah.
You're really and it's not a long-term problem. The problem's going to present itself pretty quick.
Yep.
Because you don't go years or even months before that little philosophy turns around and bites you in the tail.
Very much so.
And I'm not talking about that you don't train people, and I'm not saying that you hold the reins on some people and on. But there's a point there where if you set yourself up where all you are doing is
the sound of stress leaving right now.
Yes. Again, all I've done this weekend is tried to sleep, moved as much as a rock does on its own, and drink.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this is day one of that. There is more coming. And it just is. I mean, oh my God. We had a week, and then we also had personal stuff, personal life stuff that you still have to deal with. I probably drove 1,000 miles this week. That's actually probably short.
Yeah.
For my full-time job. And then we still have a department that's full of people, good and bad. They had life stuff happen also.
Yeah.
And it is. If you, a joke that I always make, and part of it is in person, is there's a difference between being committed and committed. You commit to something when you sign to a contract. You can also be committed to a mental institution also. And just be careful, because some of those commitments you can't undo. You can't just check yourself out sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Or you lose your Second Amendment right.
Right.
Yeah.
So it just is. It's time off is good. It's reinforcing to the membership of the organization. It's reinforcing to the officers. And there's nothing wrong with telling your officers and your membership, I have faith in you. leave me alone.
Yeah. Yeah. You can make a decision. And as a matter of fact, this weekend you must, because I'm not making any. I'm making no decisions. So, and it also goes back to mental health of our people, right? We need to teach them it's okay to take time off. It's okay because I've got a captain and a lieutenant, and both these guys, great people, love them to death, but they're so dedicated that they don't want to take time off. And it's like, no, guys, you have to. And I don't ever want them to get to the point and then go, well, Chief, you never take time off. And it's like, okay, I'm if I'm going to tell you to do it, I got to do it too. So it is important for us to do, but it also shows our team, hey, you have to take care of yourself as well. Self wellness is an important thing. If you're not healthy, how can you lead others? And so best way for me to show you that is to say, boys, I'm out this weekend. Don't call me.
Yeah.
Probably the last thing I'll add to this is just, if the organization can't function without you, that's a really bad spot.
Oh yeah,
in.
100%.
You've actually really failed.
Yes.
And you need to have a pretty serious reevaluation of how the organization's operating.
There's a delineation there, right? Can it function without you, or do you perceive it cannot function without you?
Well, sure. Oftentimes it's the latter, right? Oftentimes it's your perception of it. But it goes back to Matt's point, which is if you build a thing that, and it doesn't, again, we're talking the fire industry, but this goes for any business. If you build something to where the only one that holds the keys to success is you, well, then it's not going to be successful at all.
Right.
Like one person can't have all the answers. It's just not, you can't build on that. You're building the Empire State Building on a pebble. That doesn't work, right? That's going to crush it. That's not going to work. So you have to be able to diversify. You have to be able to delegate. You got to be able to hand off some of this stuff. And if you're not comfortable doing that, well, then that is not good for your department or your organization as a whole. And I agree with Matt wholeheartedly. There comes a point where you have to look at yourself and go, okay, well, if I can't trust you, that may not be a you problem. That may be a me problem.
And that's a big part of this weekend for me, is not necessarily the fire service side of it, but my business side of it, right? So I've got crews out working. They've worked all day today. They're doing stuff different places. And I'm looking for them to not have to call me every 5 minutes. I had 2 calls today, and they were both, hey, just wanting to let you know we got that taken care of.
Yeah.
That's phenomenal.
Yeah.
That's amazing. It's not I don't know what to do here. Does this screw turn into the right or the left?
And let me ask you, as the boss, did you go, well, how did you get that done? Did you do this? Did you do that? No.
That excellent.
You trusted him.
Good job.
Excellent. Great job. And if it's wrong, I'll learn about it on Monday. But right now, great job.
Yeah.
It just, no organization has a person that is irreplaceable.
100%.
And if you think that you're irreplaceable,
you're wrong.
You're wrong. And it's just, that's a really, really tough spot to put yourself in. Because if you're irreplaceable in an organization, then you never get the opportunity to fail.
Yeah.
And make a mistake and
Or advance.
There's that too.
Well, and you set the entire organization up for failure.
Yeah.
If it's 100% relying on you, and heaven forbid you get hit by a car tomorrow, well, you just set up your entire organization to fail. Yeah. That's not good. That's not what you want. In the fire service, there's this big talk about, legacy leadership. Train the next person to take over your job. Train the next person to take over their job, so on and so forth. I'll be 100% honest. I don't buy into that. And here's why. Think about our jobs, right? 90% of the time, we don't get to pick the person that succeeds us. We don't get to pick the person that comes after us. So why not just build an entire department of good leaders?
Right.
So no matter where they go, they're good leaders no matter where they go. And my goal is to have great leaders in every department across the state of Texas. Not necessarily my next chief, not necessarily the next assistant chief of the department, not necessarily, but I don't care if they go to Live Oak. I don't care if they go to Granbury. I don't care if they go to Houston, Dallas, wherever. It doesn't matter. I want them to be good leaders and be successful no matter where they go. And if it ends up being that they get to stay with us and take over my position, well, then God bless, we move forward in a great light. But these departments that are like, oh, I'm grooming this person to take over my job. Well, 90% of the time, that's not your decision. We all have a board that we answer to, whether it's a city council, whether it's an ESD, whether it's a volunteer board, whatever. They pick the next person. So this idea that you think you're grooming somebody to take your job I think you're setting them and you up for failure. But instead, how about we train all of our people to just be doggone good leaders? And the only way to do that is to trust them and let them make decisions.
And there's nothing wrong with mentoring that person
No,
you
of course
take
not.
a lot
Yeah.
liking to, right? But that doesn't mean that they're going to get that job.
Exactly right.
It's just you took a special interest in Billy Bo Jim Bob,
Yep.
and you mentored him a little bit more than maybe you mentored some of the others.
Yep.
And
Les Stevens has literally fire chiefs across the country. Of course, he's the chief at San Marcos, for those that may not know. He has literally fire chiefs across the country because his whole thought process is, I want to make you to where you can lead any department that you're going to. Because it's probably not going to be this one, right? I mean, the reality is, you're either not going to stay here, or if I get fired, they're not going to pick my next, the next person I had in line for it or whatever. But I want to train a bunch of people that are really good. And I don't care if you go to Phoenix or Indianapolis or New York or Wisconsin or whatever. I want you to be great no matter where you go. And I think that's a great philosophy. I think that's a great concept. And I think it's important that we do that. But again, the only way to do that is to trust your people and let them make decisions.
The other problem with for lack of better words, not hedging your bet and actually training the department accordingly, when you pick the heir apparent, who's to say they're actually worth a crap in the position?
Right.
But at least you've done nothing to have any sort of safety net or another person that can remotely step in. And the last part I'll add is that something that we've talked about in training is, reach outside of your department for training.
Mm-hmm.
Get an outside perspective, get an outside influence so that you're not doing inbred training.
Right.
And if your command structure is a monarchy and it is handed down crown and scepter, you are really setting yourself up for some wild times there.
Well, and not only that, but what does that tell the rest of your department when you're like, oh, I'm training this person to take my position? Well, you just told the rest of your department, you guys aren't good enough. You're not worthy. What? No, I don't want to do that. Everybody in my department should be gunning for my job. And I want to train them how to do it. And I want to train them how to be lieutenants. And I want to train them how to be captains, because no matter where they go, I want them to be able to do the job.
Yeah. And B.
Yeah.
And B.
Yeah.
I mean, literally that. It's just, there's 14,000 different ways to build a department, lead a department, and take the department whatever direction you want.
Mm-hmm.
Some are good, some are bad. Some are specific to the organization, the community, the area.
Yeah.
Perspective adds perspective. And zeroing in on just one little pond, one little fish, it can be dangerous going down that path.
You're 100% right.
And I don't personally think that's a good way to kind of build for the future. The other part of it is that, and I'll even defend some of it. I get it. You might have the most ideal person on the department to be whatever position, but they don't have time, they don't have buy-in, they just won't do it.
Yeah.
Or they have the skills, the knowledge, and everything else for it, but they don't have the people skills to get them there.
Well, the communication piece.
Communication.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's one thing. I've had instructors come in. Of course, we run an academy down in Divine Fire and EMS Academy, but I've had instructors work for me who are, man, we brought these guys in because they're talented. They're the best engineers in San Antonio. They're the best engineers in, wherever, right? And they're the best, backseat riders. They've been riding backseat for 20 years. These guys are the best, but they don't have the communication piece to take what they know and articulate it to the students. And it's like, well, you can't go on being an instructor if you can't communicate the knowledge that you have to the next generation, because that is the entire purpose of being an instructor. And so you're right. When you're talking about leaders, they might have all the skills, all the knowledge, all that, but if they can't articulate that to the next generation because they don't have the communication skills or the patience to teach the young buck who's green how to do that stuff, well, it's pretty hard to lead. I mean, those are kind of requirements for the job.
Yeah, and we talked about this earlier. Like, we take somebody that has zero, like they're starting
Brandon,
ground green. Oh, look at there, got a call.
Look at that, we're toning out. I don't even know how that came through. I've got my stuff turned off. Go ahead.
Mine's gone off like 35 times today. But we take this person that knows nothing, that's from nothing, that has no clue what we're doing other than they have this little bit of desire or this interest.
Right.
And we're taking them and producing somebody that can function as a firefighter.
Absolutely.
And there's this perception in some departments and some places that I've seen all over that they're looking for the person off the street that already has the ability. And it's like, no, you have to teach that.
Yeah.
It's not like I went to kindergarten last week. I know how to, I've got this. I got hydraulics down.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't work like that.
It's so funny.
Okay, I stayed at a Holiday Inn Express.
That's exactly right. I stayed at a Motel 6 last night. I'm good to go. So you're exactly right. I get departments all the time that will call us and they'll say, hey, do you have any students that we're trying to fill a driver operator? Do you have any students that are ready for that? Well, no. That's not what we do. Like, I mean, we teach driver operator course? Sure, for more advanced people, but our basic class is just that. It's a basic class. I'm teaching them the fire triangle and the tetrahedron and the difference between the nozzles and, how to do a proper load and the different loads and the Minuteman and all this stuff. Like, no, I'm not teaching them to be a driver operator. And do I have anybody that's ready for that? Absolutely not. If you're calling me, asking me for that, you don't understand what we do. And it's the same idea. They're like, well, could we teach them? Well, yeah, sure, if you want to take the time. Well, we need them to drive next week. Well, then no. Like, not and be successful, right? I mean, you can do whatever you want. It's your department, right? That's what I tell these guys when they call. You can do whatever you want. It's your department. But you understand, 13 weeks ago, this guy didn't know anything about fire. And now you want him to pump a truck and understand fire dynamics and all that? We didn't give him an associate's degree in fire science. That's not what we did.
We gave him don't die.
We gave him don't die, I gave him the very bare minimum to pass the test. That's what I did,
And so it's funny, we bounce into the don't die because I tell all these people all the time, our academy is the Don't Die Academy.
Yeah.
That's literally what it is. Am I trying to produce a 5-year firefighter out of? No.
And you can't.
Like, it's absurd to think that you're going to produce somebody that's going to be to that level in that amount of time.
Yeah.
And even, how long is yours?
Ours is 13 weeks.
Okay, we're 9, but we figured out 9 is too short.
Sure.
So we're gonna.
Well, how many days a week do you go?
So it's online for the week, and then Saturday is our hands-on day.
Okay, so gotcha.
So we're gonna go to about probably 11. It's gonna be our new number.
We do 13 weeks, but it's all in classroom.
Yeah.
So we meet Tuesdays and Wednesdays and Saturdays. So we're meeting 3 days a week, a total of 24 to 30 hours a week that we're meeting. And so
that 20 or 30 hours of that didactic portion, that's on them.
Gotcha.
Like if you don't
know how to read
and put the effort into
it,
that's on you. You're gonna fail and bye.
Right.
You didn't make it because you didn't do it, and that's not. I built this. You take this, and you do it, and that's on you, And so I'm not dedicating the instructor time to that, which allows me to have. So our normal Saturday is 3 to 4 different projects, is what I like to call them, stations, whatever you want to
Right.
call them, where each one of these 3 or 4 different stations has
3 or 4
five
skill sets.
or 5 different
Yeah.
instructors that are actually taking the time on that hands-on day
Sure.
to make all the stuff you learned from the book into reality.
Right.
And that's what that time's for. And we're gonna dive deep on whatever. And if you don't understand it, we're gonna pull you to the side, go back over it.
Step
We're
by
gonna work
step,
on it.
one by one. Right.
Right. I would rather spend the time on the hands-on and let them just do that normal mundane, reading the book, doing the test, learning whatever
Yeah.
that's in the book. That's on them. And if they choose not to do that, at least if they fail and they go all the way through it, because they're not going to not get to be a volunteer, whatever department they
Oh, sure.
right?
Yeah.
We take from the masses.
Yeah.
We're doing this for 20, 25.
The only way this really ends up mattering is if you want to go career, to be completely honest. Right.
To be completely honest. But at least they got that part in that hands-on day.
Yeah.
That's the real part that matters, that they know how to put two hoses together with a coupling.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. They may not understand the chemical whatever that's happening.
But maybe they might get smooth bump up to the pump. Yeah.
That's it.
Stay alive. Don't die.
Don't die.
Yeah.
And then they've got the rest of the next 20, 30 years that they're going to volunteer somewhere
to become a pretty good firefighter.
To become a good firefighter.
Yeah.
And I'm a big proponent of in the volunteer fire service, we've got to be well-rounded firemen.
Absolutely.
Like, we have to know, we don't have to be the expert at ropes and knots, and we don't have to be the expert at this piece.
But you better be a jack of all of it.
We better be a jack of all of it.
Yeah, I agree.
We better be able to cut a car up. We better be able to tie some knots. We better be able to function in all realms of this. We don't have to be the best, because chances are somebody over there on the side is like, yeah, I got that monkey fist. I can make that.
Yeah.
And not everybody's that guy.
Right.
But that's his time to shine. He can do that. But you can support him really well because you understand what's going on.
So one of my instructors that I bring in he's a solid engineer in San Antonio. I mean, this guy is amazing. Love the guy to death. So he's teaching our people. He's like, well, hey, you need to start staging your gear next to your apparatus. That way it's quicker than going to your locker and all that. And I pulled him off and I said, Leo, brother, they may not be on the engine the next run. It may be a brush truck. They may be in the rescue. It's not like you. They don't know what apparatus they're getting on with the next call. And he was like, well, how do they know what to do? And I said, that's why we train them. Yeah, it's difficult, right? It's not like their job is the same every single time.
It's that well-rounded approach.
It's that well-rounded approach. They have to be jacks of all trades, even though they become masters of none.
Yeah. And the likelihood of them being the knot lord.
Yeah.
Right. And I pick on ropes and knots because I was way into that. I became really good at that. Like, I could do all this stuff blindfolded in the dark.
Sure.
With lions and tigers and cobras attacking me. But
oh my.
I'm gonna show Jesse a Facebook post, and he's gonna read it, and he's gonna try.
I'm gonna cry.
I'm hijacking this, and then I'll show it to Chief also.
Yeah, I don't think you're hijacked. It's your podcast. You can do whatever you want.
The volunteer. Here's the kicker, and we were having this discussion earlier, where it's really hard to give a volunteer like a seat assignment.
Mm-hmm.
Because you don't exactly know how many you're going to get on the truck each time.
Mm-hmm.
And on top of that, you don't know what truck you're actually taking.
100%.
That's awesome.
And one of the bigger issues, we'll almost call it a hamstring on volunteers, is that they actually don't know what they're going to be taking,
or what they're going to be doing,
or what their assignment's going to be on that call. So it goes back to the robustness and how deep and how wide is the magic hat. We do have to train and educate across a broad spectrum, and it is, I would argue, not wise to specialize in one skill as a volunteer.
No.
And that the more options and tools and resources that person has access to make for a much well-rounded individual, but crew and ultimately department.
I can make the same leap for career, right?
Yeah.
Like, unless you're on a team, a specialized team, you should know a little bit about all of it. You may not be like balls deep on the whole Swiftwater thing, but you at least know, hey, I don't need to go into that.
Right. Well, and depending on where the guy is in the career department, I pick on SAFD because they obviously that's one of the larger departments in the state of Texas, and they have basically what truck you're on every call. If that truck rolls, you roll, but if that truck doesn't roll, it's not your problem, and like they get that, right? But who says tomorrow you're not moved from that company to another company? And now all of a sudden you got a whole new job, and you better know how to do that one as well.
Yeah, you went from the engine to the truck.
Yeah. All of a sudden it's completely different role, right? But yes, you're right. Even in a lot of career houses, you still have to have that mentality of I know how to do all of these jobs, especially, again, we go back to the leadership portion, especially if you're going to go be an officer and you're going to be a lieutenant and whatnot. You better at least have a good concept of what all of your people's tasks are and how they're to perform them. Because how else can you lead them if you don't understand at least what it is they're supposed to be doing?
Well, go even on 180 degrees opposite of knowing what they're supposed. How do you know they're doing it wrong?
Yeah, exactly. That's what I mean. Yeah.
Like, how do you know that wasn't the most absolute dangerous point in time to do that?
100%. If you didn't know the job.
If you didn't know the job.
Yeah.
Like, and Matt's passing around his phone showing this Facebook deal. And if you haven't at this point paused this episode and went and figured out what the hell happened in Granbury on Sunday.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sorry, you're dumb, right? So
you're missing out.
You're missing out. So we had a crew on a apartment fire perform like this textbook VES.
Yeah.
Like VEIS. Like they actually did the isolate. Like it wasn't just this was textbook. And these guys are so, I don't know how to put it, but so junior members. Like these are rookies. These are people that fall in the rookie category, led by somebody with a little bit more experience. Right? They had good leadership, but they pull this thing off, and then it's this social media frenzy.
Well, not just social media. I mean, it's a complete media frenzy.
Yes.
I mean, national news, whole 9 yards. And again, if you haven't pulled it up, go check it out. Granbury saved a 2-year-old, right? 2-year-old, is that correct?
Yeah.
2-year-old. Amazing save, amazing technique on the VEIS. They did everything picture perfect. But even when you do everything picture perfect, there's haters.
There's
haters. There's always going to be haters. Right? But that doesn't. I'll tell you, it doesn't matter what business or line of work you're in, especially on social media. There's always going to be people who, oh well, that's this is staged, or oh blah blah blah. It's like, come on, man, like have some common sense. Like that's not.
Well, we normally do stage 2-year-olds in all of our house fires.
The trick is,
unfortunately, most of them don't make it, but.
I mean, the absurdity of that, right? Like the thought process of that, and the thought that's like, oh, these wannabe firefighters. Well, that wannabe firefighter just saved a life, like better than most of you can do. Yeah, but it goes back to perception, right? People's perception is their truth, and we've talked a lot tonight about leadership, and part of being in leadership is understanding how to. And I think you guys do a really good job in Granbury of giving people the right perception, right? Getting them to understand what it is you do. Because, well, just like this podcast, there's a lot of departments out there. And obviously, you guys know we're big on social media, right? TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, all that stuff, right? There's a lot of people who gave us flack when we started doing social media. Oh, that's not what fire departments do. Oh, that's not the right thing. Same with the podcast, right? I'm sure you guys have experienced that. Oh, departments don't do podcasts. What is this? But the reality is, we're telling the story. We're getting the information out there. We're informing people about what's going on, and that's why we do it. Do we have a little fun along the way? Sure, of course. If you can't have fun, why do it? But the reality is, this is a great outlet to be able to tell the story. And as good leaders, that's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to tell you what we're doing. And it's funny because go back to haters, right? If we didn't inform you, they don't ever tell us nothing. They don't ever give us any information.
Right.
But yet you find outlets to give information, and all of a sudden it's like, well, these guys are just showing off. They're just want to be. And it's like, okay, well, you can't make everybody happy, but
No.
you guys are doing it. You guys are doing an outstanding job at Granbury.
So
Very proud of you.
and it's funny. I've gone through every comment, every share, and all those posts on Facebook from that. And the general public, and this is gonna sound calloused and hard. The general public says that's amazing and whatever.
Sure.
It's like it rolls right off.
Of course.
But the guy that's from
Because we just did our job. That's
Right.
what we did. Right.
But the guy from Chicago Fire that says that's amazing, good job.
Oh, yeah.
No, it's like, yes, I fucking made it. Like,
Because he understands what it means, right?
right.
Because the brotherhood runs deep. Let's be honest. And so when you get those Chicagos or the New Yorks or the LAs, or even to be honest, for me, even when the Houstons and the Dallases, Topeka, yeah, I don't care, right? But somebody who understands what we do and they understand how big of a deal this really was, it's not just your everyday, hey, you guys did really well. You don't even know how well we did. Like, and it's not to take away from the general public. The general public's great, right? We love them dearly. But most of them have no idea what it's like to go into a 500-degree burning, house or burning building, smoke filled. You can't see squat. You're relying on a thermal imaging camera to try to see anything. You isolate, searching for a human being. They don't get the concept of what that's like, So when they say, "Oh, you guys did good," well, thank you, but you don't really know what it means. But when the guys from Chicago Fire or FDNY or LA FD, when they're like, "Hey, you guys did really well," oh my God, like, thank you, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
It's there's an analogy that I use all the time, and I typically reference it to politics, but it's actually really applicable to this also. So imagine a New York skyline, giant towers rising, sun's rising, and you zoom in to one of the top floors of the tower, and there's a gigantic board meeting, 50-foot long table surrounded by just people in black suits, and at the head of the table is the CEO, and at the other end of the table is a Labrador wearing a party hat. And that's sometimes what it feels like being the volunteer.
Yeah.
Is just like where people are like, "Oh, look at you, you're cute." And they pat you on the head.
Yeah.
It's like,
I'm still at the table.
damn it.
Yeah.
There's things that we do
Yeah.
that are more than just cute.
Yeah.
And it's I was talking to these guys, our guy and the other department's member. And I told him, I said, I need you to kind of really put this into perspective. I'm going to give you two quick examples. The first one is I've been on Granbury for 15 years, and I've run exponentially more recoveries than I ever had even the opportunity to do a rescue.
Sure.
And the second part of this is I need you to actually understand that what you did and how you did it is actually really awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to be recognized, and you're not going to understand it, that And I did tell them that. I told them that early. I said, guys, I said, this story's going to get legs. Like, you need to be prepared for that. That will happen because the scenario, the circumstance, the rescue, the outcome, the whole story is not typical.
Right.
That also helps that it got caught on camera. There's that little part too.
Yeah.
But the whole thing culminates into an exceedingly rare event with, I mean, we always train for the desired outcome. The desired outcome's exceedingly rare.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because of some of the things you were talking about earlier, the whole 500 degrees and toxic atmosphere.
Yeah.
Not real conducive to longevity.
Yeah, especially for a 2-year-old.
Especially for a 2-year-old.
Yeah.
And what you guys did was exceptional.
Absolutely exceptional.
Absolutely exceptional and not common. That's part of the reason that the story's going to blow up.
Yep.
Because if it happened every day, you would see it on YouTube every day.
Yeah.
Or TikTok every day. And those are global platforms.
Yeah.
And if you go search for VEIS rescue on YouTube or TikTok,
there's 10 videos.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For all of eternity.
Well, now there's 11.
Right.
You know.
It is. It's like, guys, understand that people are going to look at this video that understand what they're doing.
Right.
And realize like how exceptional it was.
Well, you know, that's just like, so in the same week that you guys did the rescue, we had a CPR where we got Rosk back, right?
Yeah.
Again, CPR and getting Rosk back is that you're going to lose far more than you get back. That's just the reality, you know, because CPR only works for certain type of events and things like that. If you've busted open your aorta, your CPR is not going to work for you. You're dead, right? So you already start behind the curve.
Well,
and then
the reality is you don't do CPR on live people.
Right, exactly. They're already dead. So the ability to bring somebody back from the dead is a very small fraction of people that are even possible to do that on. So the same week you guys do a rescue, we do a CPR and get Rosk on a patient and bring him back basically from the dead. And I had the same conversation with those guys. Now, I didn't tell them there was going to be a media blitz because ours wasn't caught on camera. Dang it, we need to start carrying cameras with us. But again, it's a big deal. This person was dead. They were deceased. You brought them back to life. You need to understand why that's a big deal, because in your career, you might have a handful of those. If you do this 25 years, you might get a handful of those. That just doesn't.
You mean 2 or 3?
Yes, that just doesn't happen. Yeah. It just doesn't. You know, you're going to lose far more than you ever save. But the reason we train on this is because the ones we save are the ones it matters to. Just like that rescue. You're only going to be able to do that once in your career, maybe twice if you're lucky, right? But that's not something that happens every day. The situation has to be an exact right situation, but even then you have to be trained for that exact situation.
Yeah.
And people don't understand it. We train like that not because that's what we get to do every day, but when the situation comes, we need to know how to do it right. That's the bottom line.
Yeah, and I'm 25 years in fire service, and I've never done that.
Yeah,
I've never had that situation where
100%.
that was a thing. Like, I've gone to countless recoveries.
Yep,
countless.
And I've thrown ladders on places, and I've done
the
VEIS probably 1,000 times. But actually getting a rescue out of it,
yeah,
it's unheard of.
Like it's rare. It really is.
Yeah, it's like frog hair.
Yeah.
It's that fine and that rare.
Fine. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, it's insane, and you know, we do, and I don't know about Divine, but Granbury gets a lot of pushback on the fact that we're not paid, we're not career. Like it's like
reference the dog in a party hat.
Yeah, absolutely.
We get thousands of these. Well, you guys should be paid. Why is Granbury not paid? Well, Target didn't come here because Granbury's not paid. Well, no. Target didn't come here because you weren't going to buy enough shit from Target
Right,
to put
right.
a store here.
Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly
not
right.
even true. Target was looking to come to Granbury. They just made a bad economic decision. Target was going to buy into Granbury. They had the land. There's a big grocery store that's very popular in Texas that swooped in right behind them and bought the property that they passed on in 2008.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we get all this pushback constantly about
Yeah.
that. And it's like, you just want to pat them on the head and say, you don't really understand
Yeah.
what you're saying. But the fact that you're so convinced in your beliefs is admirable.
So I will tell you, we don't get near the pushback for a couple reasons. One, your guys' geographical location to be 100% volunteer department is one of the most unique things about you, right? You're outside of a major metropolis area, and you're not a small community yourselves. You're a pretty good sized community. So a community that size, right outside of a metropolis, to be fully volunteer, that's a rare thing, to be completely honest, and I commend you on it. But I go back to the things we've talked about before, which is there's only a handful of reasons that volunteer departments go away, and you're making sure that those don't creep in. There's not a municipality in the world who wants to pay $1 million payroll for something they can get for free. I mean, that's just it. $7 million payroll, right? A $7 million payroll that they're getting for free. That's $7 million they can use elsewhere. Now, if you weren't trained up to standard, if you weren't being able to get there as fast, if you weren't having people on shift, if you weren't doing all these things, if you weren't able to do rescues, right? Then they would take that $7 million and go, hey, we don't have a choice. We've got to pay people to be on staff.
And they should.
And they should.
That's
because the community comes first. Period.
Right. Yeah. That's I would argue that's a big distinction between us and a struggling organization.
Right.
We're fighting tooth and nail to make it very known in public that this level of service that we provide is just simply on par
100%.
with what should be expected of any organization.
Yes.
Volunteer, combo, or
career.
paid.
Right.
And the fact of the matter is that I don't know if there's a more open to discussion volunteer fire chief in the United States about the reality of being volunteer, what it takes to maintain that, and the level of service that we have to provide. And if we're not, it's okay to have the discussion. So instead of having a catastrophic event happen,
Yep.
you're actually getting a safety net in place.
100%.
So that in the event that you ever do need this combo service, that it's not this gigantic catch everyone blindsided, and it's not a baby saved, it's a dead baby.
Right.
That changes the narrative.
Absolutely. 100%.
Completely. And the fact of the matter is, it should.
Yes. Yes. You're absolutely right. And that goes back to the entire conversation, which is if you're going to, there's not a municipality out there that wants to pay that if they don't have to, but for them not to have to, exactly what you just said, the standard has to be the same. If I had paid staff on, would I be getting a better service? Right now, the answer to that's no. The service is about as good as you can get, which is commendable for a completely volunteer crew, right? And so when we talk about, well, do you guys get pushed back down in Divine? We're a little different in the fact that, yes, we're 35 minutes outside of San Antonio, but I service 4,000 people. I mean, we're not a huge community. We're still very rural. Our taxes, the ESD only brings in about 500,000. So most everybody understands that there's no way we could go fully career right now. I mean, it's just the money's just not there. I mean, anybody that says, well, you should just do it, you're just ludicrous. You don't understand business or money or any of that. So we don't get as much of that pushback. As a matter of fact, I got more pushback when I added the combo piece. Yeah. Now, here's the interesting thing, because our guys were like, well, why are we adding paid staff if we're doing okay as volunteers? And my answer to that was real simple, because we're not doing as well as we could with somebody on station. See, our guys, I was having trouble getting our guys to pull shift, and so we were still having 6 and 7 and 8 minute turnout times to get wheels turning on a truck. Well, as you guys know, nowadays, if this was 20 years ago, that would be fine. That room and contents fire would still be a room and contents fire.
Yeah.
But nowadays, that fire is doubling in size every 60 seconds.
Mm.
That means by 6 minutes in, that's no longer a room and contents fire. We're now fighting a full structure, or at least a half a structure. And so having my guys now to where I've got paid staff on that we can get a truck out in 2 minutes, we've already saved almost $1 million worth of property this year that we would have never saved with just volunteers. And I told my guys before we ever went combination, going back to you got to be willing to have the conversation, right, Matt? I told them, I said, look, if we can't get to where people are pulling shift on station, I have to hire people to do that because that extra 4 to 5 minutes matters when it's somebody's house. It matters when there's a 2-year-old inside. It matters when there's things to be saved. And so I got a lot of pushback initially from it. Well, what has happened is we went combination. I've got 2 people on, per shift, and it's 4896s, 3 shifts, A, B, and C. And so there's somebody in the building 24/7. Well, now, not only do I have my 2 paid staff on, but now I'm getting 3 and 4 volunteers that stay every night. And I'm like, well, if you guys would have just done that from the beginning,
I was
you
saying all this.
could have saved me a lot of money. You know what I mean?
We were talking about that earlier. If we ever tentatively went, understand that when I say right now, that if we're going shifts, they're still volunteer.
Right.
Okay. But if we went to a shift-based schedule, I would be a lot more inclined to just put one person at the station, and what they're there for is driving.
Yeah. Yeah. Get that truck out.
Get the truck out.
Yeah.
I could see us having a lot of success off of that.
But it's so obscure,
Right.
our situation versus the majority of everybody else's situation, right? We're so much on the fringe of what's most people's reality that we can't relate.
Right. Well, and here's why. Because you train more than any other volunteer department, but you pay less than any other career department. So you're exactly right. You're in a utopia where you've got people who desire to be trained and want to do the job and all that, but who aren't worried about, well, what do I get out of this? And don't get me wrong, I'm sure you still have those in 300 some people, but you have enough people that are like, I care about doing the job. I care about the community.
We shifted the thought of what do I get out of this? And it was a conscious effort to shift the thought of what do I get out of this? So what does a member of your department actually get out of it? They get, number one, the brotherhood.
Right.
That's like the biggest selling.
Probably the biggest thing that we've pivoted on is, I've said it 1 trillion times on this podcast now. During COVID, I realized that the number one thing missing from all Americans' lives is human interaction.
Oh, 100%.
For community. Okay. And it took us a while to figure out how to kind of mold that. But let me tell you, that's something we have. You come to us, your eyes are going to be open.
Yeah.
You will find purpose. We will give you purpose. We will hone that purpose. We will sharpen that purpose. And we will really, really get you, if you're remotely open to embracing that community. Oh my God. I mean, we're talking Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, just sprint through, grab candy bars, load up. I mean,
you got the golden ticket.
Yeah, you're in.
But the other piece of that is we offer them the path to a career.
Yes.
Right? And you do the same thing.
Correct.
It's a path to a career. It's a way to turn this thing that I figured out that I really fucking enjoy. It's
Yeah.
awesome into my job.
Well, you guys are hitting it right on the head, and that is the success we have found in Divine is based around the theory that no one cares how much you know until they know how much you care. We have built a legitimate family.
That's solid.
You know what I mean? We have built a legitimate family. Listen, I pointed out to my captain. My captain is a 23-year veteran of the United States Army. He retired a master sergeant in the Army, and he was like, "Why are all these 17 and 18-year-olds flocking to me like I'm their daddy?" And I said, "Let me explain to you why. Because we're in a generation for the first time in history where 50% of them are growing up without a daddy in the home.
Yeah.
We're growing up where 25% of them have a mom or dad who's already passed or deceased, where 25% of them have a mom or dad who's in prison. This is why they're flocking to you, because they don't have it at home. They are desiring that organization. They are desiring that structure that we provide. It's the structure. They're desiring that, and we're offering that. And so now they're replacing their empty nest where they don't have a daddy, and they're replacing it with the captain and the chief and all that. And if we don't, gosh darn, embrace that and understand that that's a vital role, not only in our department, but in our society as a whole, if we don't embrace that, no one else will. And I will tell you that watching this Master Sergeant in the United States Army flip, I mean, that switch in his head, and he looked at me and he said, "Chief, I know what my mission is." And now that guy, he will take these 17 and 18-year-old kids who we're teaching out of high school, and he'll say, "Hey, have you ever ran a chainsaw? No, come with me. Let's go learn. You ever ran a power tool? No, come with me. You ever ran a lawnmower? No, come with me." And he's out there being their father as well as their captain, and showing them how to run the truck and do all this, but also teaching them how to balance a checkbook, how to do an interview. He was teaching young men. We were interviewing for our paid positions, and he was teaching young men who were applying for that how to tie their tie, how to put on a suit, why the importance of looking sharp. You know what I mean? And so, and I know you guys are doing the same thing, and we have built a family within our department. And so, and I really subscribe to the philosophy of nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care. And you want to get somebody to listen to you, show them that you're willing to care about them, show them that you're willing to go out on a limb for them. And then once they do that, then we go to the second piece, which is, okay, now you trust me and we've built a relationship together. What I'm telling you is I'm going to build you a career that can pay you $50,000 or $60,000 a year. And I'm going to make you a career firefighter. And what that does is, when you go be a career firefighter, I don't want you to forget about us, right? Come back here and teach the next generation how to do the same thing. And so now I've got an 18-year-old kid, Lucas Thomas, God bless him. I got an 18-year-old kid who makes $50,000 or $60,000 a year at Live Oak Fire, comes back to us, makes another $30,000 to $40,000 a year with us. He's making $80,000 to $90,000 a year as an 18-year-old kid, and loves every flipping minute of it.
Yes.
Every flipping minute of it. His 2 days off that he gets every week, you still find him at the fire station, because he eats it up. And I asked him, I said, "Lucas, you got to go home. You got to get some rest." And he says, "Chief, my mom's at work. My dad's doing stuff. This is my family. This is where I'm at." And I'm like, well, I can't argue with that. You know what I mean? I can't. Okay, well, hang out.
The other part that a well-run organization can provide, particularly in today's climate and culture, is structure
Mm-hmm.
and, for lack of better words, purpose.
Very much so.
And this is something that I talk about. I always hear people, and I do it too, bitch about the kids. Oh my God.
This generation.
They're the end of us. And the fact of the matter is this, is that you're 18, 19, 20-year-old today, whether you like to hear it or not, they are the most educated student on the face of the earth.
Mm-hmm.
They have access, due to the devices that are in the palm of their hand,
Yep.
to the most readily available amount of information on the face of the earth. And there's something really, really unique with this generation coming up. And you hear a lot of fire chiefs talk about it, and they really do, particularly like legacy chiefs, they really overemphasize the compassion part of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, what isn't compassionate about fire EMS? So you're telling me that you have an entire generation of people that, whether you like to hear it or not, are smarter than you when they came out of school at your age, have access to more information than you ever did. They know how to utilize and research and pull up that information and apply it, and they're compassionate. And you're calling them the idiot?
Right. Right.
Yeah, no, I'm telling you, you're really, really missing an opportunity by sitting there and saying, uh, we don't want anyone under the age of 35. Like, I'm you're really screwing up.
Well, if the department was full of Jesse Slaughters,
Lord help us.
it would be freaking terrible. Like they'd infight, they'd want to kill each other. Like,
Well, and let's be honest. Do any one of us three really want to go crawling through a house fire right now?
Oh, I'll tell you, absolutely.
I mean, let's. That's a young man's game. I mean, that it really is. And you know, back to your point, one of the things I do in our officer development courses, the first thing I tell them is, don't ever BS one of your younger underlings, because they're the first to pull out this device and call you on it. Right? You try to blow smoke because you didn't know an answer. I promise you, if they're asking the question, they probably already have the answer in the palm of their hand. And so you better know what the crap you're talking about. And if you don't, it's perfectly okay to go, you know what? I don't know the answer to that. Let's go look it up together. That's the best thing you can do as a leader. But don't try to blow smoke to this generation because, sir, they've got the answer. They already know it.
Yeah.
They're seeing if you know it.
And here's, if I had one true counterpoint to what you're saying, is that when that happens and that trust is broken, confidence is broken,
Yep.
whatever you want to call it's broken. Here's the problem. They won't say that to you.
No, you're just dead to them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
you're done.
Because they have been taught to not be aggressive or confrontational. So the problem is that they know you're full of crap, and they're going to remember it.
Yep.
And they're never going to come to you for another thing.
You
Now,
become worthless to them.
if it's a simple mistake,
Sure.
whatever, that's
They can still be forgiven.
yeah,
Sure.
duck water off a duck's butt.
Yeah.
But if it's legit, that's the real problem.
Yeah.
Is that the little scheming bastards are actually really know what they're actually talking about,
Uh-huh.
and they don't appreciate you either blowing off their question concern,
Yep.
and or their ability to fact check you is universal, and then to follow it up with, you won't know that you already hit the iceberg.
So that same captain I was talking about earlier, Captain DeLucia, if my assistant chief is my right hand, he's my left hand. I can't do anything without him. I mean, these two, Jessica Martinez, who's my assistant chief, is one of the smartest women I've ever met in my entire, one of the smartest people I've ever met in my entire life. I mean, she's amazing. And Captain DeLucia, you know, his leadership is off the charts. But Captain DeLucia is older, right? He's in his 50s, whatever. And he'll go, why do these kids not just do what they're told? And I'm like, Cap, listen, you're talking about an entire different generation. The problem is, this is the first generation that had the ability to fact check the people telling them what to do. If you and I were able to do that back then, we probably wouldn't have done half the crap we were told to do, because we'd have realized it was garbage, that it was pointless, right? Now these kids have that ability. And so they're not going to just do what you tell them to do without building that trust. Now, once that trust is built, once we've built that relationship, I can tell you to go move the rocks from the right side of the sidewalk to the left side, and you won't even question it. You're just going to go do it, right? Because, Chief told me to. This must be a good reason. Let's go do this. And the other part of that is I told him, I said, one thing that'll help that is you and I, we were in the military, right? And in the military, you don't get to ask, period. I told you to do it. You go do it. That's the end of it. conversation over. In the civilian world, we have to foster a look. If you have a question on why we're doing something, it's okay to ask, and I actually want you to ask. And Cap kind of looked at me and I said, not on a fire scene, not in that moment, right? But when we get back to station, if you want to go, hey, why'd we throw the blitz fire on this? Hey, why'd we ventilate like that? Great question. Let's answer it. Because now, one, it holds me accountable, right? Make sure I know what the hell I'm doing. Two, I get the opportunity to now teach them, hey, this is what I saw, this is what I was doing, and this was the tactics we were going for. Oh, okay. Now I've taught that individual, right? But if I just say, because I told you to, well, this generation, that is, you might as well just lied to them, because that's basically what they felt you did.
Yeah.
There's
because I said so doesn't.
That's nothing. That's nothing anymore. Yeah.
There's a career department I was talking to, and this what you're exactly talking about was something that the administration was, their feathers were in a ruffle over.
Sure.
And they're literally making the statement, why are they asking so many questions? And will they please stop asking why? And now, for me, this is a customer. So I have to sit there and stand in my big red clown shoes and rock back and forth with the squeaky noise and not say anything. And what I really, really, really wanted to tell him was, for the love of Christ, your instructors are terrible. That's why they're asking why. They want to know, and you're not telling them what they want to know. And you're at least not explaining it to a level that satisfies their level of the answer. And I mean, and they all, and here's the sad thing, it's a good department. It's a really good chief.
Yeah.
Like, God, good dude. And it's just like, oh, you dinosaur. Jesus, don't be saying this out loud.
I tell my instructors when they come to work for me, one of the first things I tell them is, if you get annoyed at the question why, stop being an instructor.
Right.
People are paying to come to a class to learn how to do this. The question why is a legitimate question that you had better have answers for. And if you don't, it's okay to go, you know what, I don't know the answer to that right now, but let's look it up. Let's find out. Let's call somebody. Let's phone a friend. Let's learn together. But
the other thing that people need to segue to is they just got to remember, and all three of us, and me and you, Greg, are real close to the same age. Jesse's not that much further outside of us.
I'm a little bit.
I definitively was the last group of, basically go do it and figure it out.
yes, sir.
Okay. I mean, I am the absolute last group, a generation of that. And I'm 41 now.
I'm with you. I'm 45, so I'm with you.
And I don't know when it happened, but it happened shortly after me, where the student was literally, it's monkey see, monkey do, monkey ask questions, monkey see. Okay.
Yeah.
And then monkey asks more questions.
Yeah.
All right. And it's not just, here's your coconut,
Yeah.
go get dinner. And there's a big, huge, catastrophic disconnect there, is that the students are prompted today to not take action until they are prompted
Right.
to ask their question.
Yeah.
If you forget to ask them, do you have questions? And then, of course, you got to do the follow-up part.
Yeah.
But that's why the whole interaction of them coming in with the bombarding a why is overwhelming to the instructor, because you forgot to ask them, do you have questions?
Yeah. You're 100% right.
So what's happening is that I'm trying to think of something just stupid and basic. Deploy a blitz fire off the back of the truck. Why? Well, Jesus, that's pretty self-explanatory. Okay. Do you have any questions? Then you actually allow them to say what they have the question about.
Yeah.
Okay. Not why are we doing this? And I mean, let me tell you, I've done a ton of instruction. I beat my head against a concrete wall for 10 years before I realized that it's actually an instructor problem.
Yes, very much so.
Not a student problem. The student's not the retard.
But it's understanding the change and the evolution in our society and in our education system. Let's remember that right now we have the first group of high school students that at some point in their high school year had to be homeschooled, whether they wanted to or not because of COVID, right? That's never happened to any of us. Us guys sitting here at the table, we've never had to deal with that to where it was forced upon them that they had to learn at home. And I don't know about y'all, but I had a couple teenagers going through it, and my teenagers basically were told, well, online you can just turn in your assignments, whatever. And my sons became Google masters because it was Google the answer, put it in. Google the answer, put it in. Google the answer, put it in. And that's how they went through school for that entire year. So that year was pretty much a wash, right? They came back to school the next year and actually had to go to school, and all of a sudden they were supposed to have learned this crap last year that they didn't learn, and now they're trying to play catch up. So essentially what ended up
regressed.
Yes. So essentially what ended up happening is my junior and my senior was really a sophomore and a junior who that the school then tailored to just get them through because, well, it wasn't their fault. It was COVID and all this. I get that, right? But now I've got a kid who's graduating who isn't where he should be as far as education wise. And I got smart kids. Don't get me wrong. My sons, they're very smart. All my kids are very smart. But we have an entire generation of people who had this issue where they had to basically teach themselves for a year, and it blew their minds, right? Now, we go back to you and I talking about we were the last generation to figure it out, right? At home, my dad, go figure it out. You want to know? Go figure it out. Here's an encyclopedia. Tell a kid to look up something in an encyclopedia nowadays, right? Here's a Britannica. They would lose their minds, right? But here's an encyclopedia. Go figure it out. At school, it was the same thing, right? In shop class, figure it out. Here's the parameters, figure it out. But now we teach EMS in a high school, actually in 3 high schools. We teach EMT, and literally the principals have told us they need a step-by-step breakdown of how to take a blood pressure. What do you mean a step-by-step breakdown? Put on the cuff, pump it up, and listen. That's it. It's not rocket science. No. How do you put the cuff together? Where do we place the cuff? Can they not read? Like this is in the book. Like when we go to do skills, why do I have to give them a step-by-step breakdown? Because that's the way learning is done now. Yeah. It's done by this. And it's not a knock. That leads to, and we get frustrated because that's not how we learned, but it leads to these kids come out smarter, better educated, because they didn't learn some half-shanked way to do it. They were taught the proper way, step by step by step by step. And to be honest, it's made us better instructors because we have had to go back and go, okay, we were assuming a lot of stuff. We can't do that anymore. There's no assumption. We have to, if we're going to make an assumption, we assume that these people know absolutely nothing about anything. And that's where we instruct them. And then we have to turn them into EMTs and firefighters.
So that reminds me of back many moons ago when I did my EMT basic. You know where we learned how to do blood pressures at?
Where's that?
In the back of a driving ambulance.
Yeah.
They literally piled 6 or 8 students in the back of this ambulance and drove around and said, learn how to do a blood pressure. Like that was how we learned.
You know what's crazy about that now? There are career ambulance services who will not move until they have the first set of vitals and a line done. Used to, we had to do that stuff. We had to do that stuff on the move. You had to take a blood pressure in the back of an ambulance doing 65 down a country road where you're bopping and hitting your head on the top of the ambulance, and you had to figure out when you were going to hit that bump so you knew when to stick the arm, right?
You're right.
But now you got career ambulances that will not turn a tire until all the vitals are already taken and a line has started, which delays the patient getting to the hospital in my opinion. And it's like, that's the most important thing, right? The most important thing is these people need a hospital. And so there's a frustration on my part where it's like, I'm ready to get these wheels turning. We got to go.
I've seen the gamut of
Sure.
all the different things in EMS, and there was a period of time where we had a protocol for CPR.
Yeah.
That you worked them till they were dead or alive.
Right.
And then you loaded them in the box and took them somewhere.
Right.
And it was to take them to either get further care or get
Be pronounced. Right.
Right. So we'd have these 45, 50, 60-minute on scene times
Mm-hmm.
where we're going through 3 rounds of drugs. We're doing all this stuff before we're ever picking this person up.
Yep.
And moving them to a box. And it's crazy that I can actually see both sides of the argument.
Oh, yeah. Sure.
Right? If you're going to rural BFE hospital that really has no more capabilities than that MICU ambulance.
That's us.
Yeah. Right? Are they better off at that, working it as hard as you can there before you move? Or are they better going to what we call definitive care,
right.
which is not that definitive, right?
Right.
So it's insane that I saw all that progression through the years of my service in EMS.
Yeah. Yeah, we're still at a place because, Divine is 40 minutes from the closest level 1 trauma center. Right. And so our ambulance service, their protocols are, we do 3 rounds of epi, 2 rounds of biocarb. We work them for at least 30 minutes on site. And then we call our medical director and they can call it, without having to go to the hospital, whatever, if we don't get something back. If we get Ross back, we load them and go. Right. Any change worth it all. That changes the game, right? If we see a true bump in the heart rate at all, we work them for another 30 or we do whatever, right? But that's different from me coming from Indiana, where it was you load them up and you get going because we're 10 minutes from a hospital and we can have them at a hospital where they can get definitive care right now. And so a lot of that has changed over the years as far as that. And the other thing is it's a pendulum, right?
Right. It swings.
1 minute you're doing 15 compressions and 2 breaths, and then the next minute there's no breaths, and then the next minute is 30 and 2, and then the next minute it's and that pendulum is always swinging on everything, not just CPR, but fire and EMS, and you're supposed to push this drug. Oh no, now we're saying you can't push that drug. Well, you can push that drug, but you only push 5 mLs of it, right? So that pendulum is always swinging and it's always changing. And in my 22 years, what year is this? 24? Yeah, in my 22 years, it has changed and then changed back and then changed again. So
yeah. No, I started in '99.
Yeah, I started in 2002.
Yeah.
So
it's the same kind of principle of it, right? Yeah. It's ever evolving, and if you hang up on what you did 20 years ago, you're toast.
Well, and that's just it. We've talked a lot this week about different things here at the hunting ranch. Which, by the way, thanks for letting me come out and be a part of this, because this has been exciting and been amazing. But one of the things we talked about here at the ranch was the fact that in volunteer departments, a lot of times, God bless them, big hearts, want to do the right thing, but it's a volunteer chief who was taught by a volunteer chief who was taught by a volunteer chief who actually went to training 30 years ago. And so that means all of that information is outdated. If you're not staying up with training, if you're not staying up with the changes, that pendulum swings and it's always changing, right? Every year they come out with new rules, whether it's EMS, whether it's fire, whatever. If you're not constantly staying up with that, how can you possibly lead your organization? And, I get a lot of departments that'll call me and they'll go, why do you go to Austin? Why do you go to Austin and sit on Capitol Hill? Well, that's where it's happening, right? Mike Wisco and TCFP, these guys, they're making the rules for fire, and it has to go before the Senate and the House up there in Austin. And what they're doing is changing the way we do business. So why would I not be there keeping my thumb on the pulse of what's happening in the fire industry? Same with EMS. And if you're not doing that, as a leader, and I'm not saying go to Austin, but what I'm saying is if you're not staying up on the changes that are happening in the fire and EMS service, how can you possibly create leaders in your department if you don't know what's happening in the industry? Our job as leaders is to be at the tip of the sword, right? Our job as leaders is to know the most up-to-date information. Now, doesn't mean we have to implement it, right? But we should at least know about it. We should at least understand it. So when the conversation comes up, we can speak intelligently to those conversations because we go back to our audience has the answer in their hand. If we can't speak intelligently to it, us as leaders are going to fall off real quick because they're going to get the answers one way or another. And so we can either speak intelligently to it or they're going to go ignore us and go find somebody who can.
Right.
So,
and then they're going to look to replace you.
Yeah, 100%. And they should. That's our job.
Yeah.
It's what we're supposed to do. So
it's not a birthright.
It is not a birthright. It is absolutely not. Which is why, we talked about this too. It's why we got away from voting in our chief. Because in my opinion, your chief should be the most articulate, educated, professional person in your organization. And unfortunately, a lot of times, and I know you guys still vote yours in, and that you guys have hit the jackpot again. You guys are kind of a utopia. You really are. I mean, you're not the typical volunteer department, right? But it's one of the reasons we got away from voting our chief in because I don't think that you should vote in somebody to be in the position that is the head of the fire department because that person, even though you vote them in, may not have the most education, the best training, the best background.
So, and I'm going to ask this question just out of basically morbid curiosity.
Sure.
Right? You said we're the utopia, right?
Mm-hmm.
But how in the hell did we do this? And it's so rare that it's almost non-existent.
Well, because look, this is not me just blowing smoke because I'm sitting in your hunting cabin.
Outside guy looking in.
This is the honest to goodness truth. For the utopia you have built, you have had to have humble enough leadership to go, it's not about us. And that's the key, right? Because the problem is you get this guy who's voted in and he's like, oh yeah, my people love me and all this. Well, great, but what are you doing for them? Right? We go back to nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care. What are you doing for them? You guys have a leadership from the top down, from Matt all the way down through your officers, who one, legitimately care about your people. Two, continue to educate themselves, right? I've gotten more education being a chief than I ever did before I ever became chief. Why? Because if I'm going to expect my people to be articulate and intelligent, I got to lead the way. I can't tell them to do it. I got to show them to do it. And that's the way I lead, and I believe that's the way Matt leads. You know what I mean? You and Matt both. And I'm not going to tell you to do something that I'm not willing to do, right? I'm going to lead the way on that. And so you guys kind of became that utopia because you said, look, we understand where we're at geographically. We understand what it takes to be a good department. But we also understand that it's not the chief who makes the department. It's not the chief and the assistant chief. It's all of the people. It's the entire organization. And the problem is in so many volunteer departments, it's, I am chief, hear me roar. Well, that doesn't do anything. That's not good for any organization. But unfortunately, that is the way, because in human nature, right? Human nature is, oh, I've got power and I've got the ability. And so listen, I'm going to make a difference right now and blah, 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 and me, and I. Well, you guys don't really do that. You say, yeah, the rescue the other night, you were talking about that. Man, I trusted my people to do their job. We trained them, we taught them, we had a process. They see Nick Saban talks about up until the time, I think he said it was 1998. Up until 1998, he had a horrible record as a college coach. Why? Because he was worried about wins and losses. He was worried about what it looked like for him. He was worried about him getting his next job. He was worried about all that. In 1998, somebody said, hey, if you stop worrying about the outcome and you start worrying about the process, you're going to be a lot better coach. And he said, and in that moment, it switched. And all of a sudden, he worried about the process. And I don't care about wins and losses. And it's not about me. It's about the guys. And how can I make them better men? How can I make them better leaders? And then all of a sudden, you got Alabama who goes undefeated for something like an eternity or something like that. You know, I mean,
Right.
they do. Why? Because he quit worrying about the wins and losses, and he started worrying about creating good men. He started creating good leaders. Well, if you got an entire team of good men and good leaders, you're going to win a lot of games. And fire departments are the same way. You guys quit worrying about how we look on paper and how we look in the face of the public. And are we creating good people who know how to save the community? Because ultimately, that's our job. What we're here to do is provide a service for the community. And you did a wonderful, and I tell you guys this all the time. We steal stuff. You know, you guys look at us and you go, "Hey, Divine, you're doing a great job." Well, we're coming right back at you saying we're stealing stuff from Granbury. I'm stealing stuff from Robinson and Chief Stephen up there. You know, we're all borrowing from each other. Why? Because we're all doing the same thing. We're taking care of our people. We're educating and training. We're leading from the tip of the sword. We're all and it just so happens that you guys in your location and the way you're doing things, you have created this wonderful, perfect utopia that works. I think for us, we're creating a lot of the same culture as Granbury, but we lack the population to draw from, right? And that's
I'll
our
give
biggest
you
problem.
that. Yeah.
Our problem is you guys have created that environment and you have a bigger population to draw from. So now you get the right people in those places and do all that. Our population is so low that finding anybody who's willing to do this job is difficult, right?
So, have you tried recruiting in San Antonio?
So we actually have just really opened that up in the last year, and it's done wonders.
Okay.
But again, going back to, I've got people that drive all the way down from the north side of San Antonio, New Braunfels, San Marcos, that type area, right? But getting those people to drive down on a regular, and that's hard because now you're talking, you're costing them money, right? Like it's not just I don't have to make money. I'm costing them money coming down and being part of it. They still are, but it's not as frequent as if they lived here.
Here's the only other caveat that I'll add to that.
Yeah.
Is keep recruiting, pull more of them in, so that even if they only show up once a week or once every 2 weeks or whatever, twice a month, it's a ratio number.
Sure.
Okay. Whatever that number is for you, it's just math.
Right.
Do you want to cover, like in I always explain this to people this way. Do I want to cover 1,800 calls a year with 20 people or 120? Well, it's 120. Do I want 5 people on the truck guaranteed every time? Yes. Okay. Well, how many membership do I have
To do that.
to be able to do that? And the craziest, I'm all about numbers, and yeah, I have a degree in math and on and on. The craziest number that I never realized, and parallels, it's scary at how close the number parallels, is it's the ratio of membership on a truck. Okay. How many people do you want to have on a truck? How many people are you having on a truck?
Yeah.
And the craziest, most screwed up, jacked up thing is that our total membership, 7 days a week, okay, divide that number by the membership, okay, you can divide it by trucks, you can divide it however you want,
Right.
okay, but the kicker with being volunteer is that their availability is truly random.
Yes.
Okay. So if you go off of the concept that they're available 1 day a week, and that was just kind of the number I ran with, is 1 day a week, one truck, X amount of people on the truck. Did the math, it exactly equals our total response personnel.
Yeah.
Averaging. Our average response personnel is directly correlated and shown mathematically to be random to the number of membership that you have.
Right.
So the answer to this is increase the membership.
So here's my caveat to that. You're 100% right. I love that. That's what we talk about, the math on that. I'm going to add you one more math piece, and that is as I increase membership, I have to increase gear,
Oh yeah, no,
which then increases the cost, right? And so here's one of the things that one of my mentors was really good at telling me. He said, you don't have to just be good at recruiting. You also got to be good at letting people go.
yeah.
And that's hard, right? That's one of the things I know you want to volunteer. I know you want to be here. I know you want to be a part of it. But darling, I haven't seen you in 3 months. Like, I'm sorry, but you got $8,000 worth of gear sitting in the locker that I can be using for somebody who can be here. It's not that I'm mad at you. It's not that I don't love you. It's not that I don't want you to volunteer, but you're holding $8,000 ransom. That's what you're doing, and the community could use that. And so I thought it was very profound to me when my mentor was like, "Hey, you got to be just as good at letting people go as you are recruiting them." That blew my mind. Like I was like, "Well, I don't want to let people go," and he goes, "Well, you better learn, because that's where your hangup's going to be, right? You can't keep everybody. You only have so much gear. You only have so much funding. You only have so much money. You only have so much. I don't care where you are. I don't care what city you're in. I don't care how much your budget is. These things factor in. You got to be just as good at saying goodbye as you are hello." And it's like, whew, okay, that's a powerful punch. But it does come down to when you start working out those numbers, right? Okay, I'm going to take a little bit of the randomness out of this. If you're not making X, Y, Z, like for us, it's you have to make 8 hours a week. If you can't make 8 hours a week for our department, I can't really use you because I have enough people who can. That's not a bad thing. I'm not mad at you, but I need you in the building 8 hours a week.
See, we haven't crossed that bridge.
Yeah.
What we're after is the 8 hours of training
There you go.
a week. And the number doesn't look anything like that, but we're after the training number. Let me rephrase that. I was about to say, I don't care how often you show up as long as you're at training. No, I care.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. But yeah, if you're
Yeah, but our average
Oh, yeah.
member is 70 hours plus
Yeah,
a year
that's
in training hours.
that's
Right.
that's the and a low responding member is 70 calls a year.
Right.
I mean, that poor bastard's catching 5, 6 calls, 10 calls a month.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's low. Like, I mean, low.
Right.
You were really low on the list at only catching a call a week.
Right. But
Really low.
but what does that do for your community?
Well, but again, this is why we invest in the training part.
100%.
Is that I don't have a problem with and again, realize what my levels of inactivity are.
Right.
Okay. Really, it's 50 calls a year. If you're not hitting 50 calls a year, something's wrong. I don't care how many calls you make. I do care at how much training hours you have. That does matter to me, because I'm perfectly fine if I don't see you, say you're a union guy and you got an outage or big projects coming up, whatever.
Right.
Family, you disappear for a little while, perfectly fine. with it.
Hurricane hits, you're in Houston for 2 months.
Right.
Right.
Take care of the training. You're good to go. But again, that's our perspective and that's our system.
Sure.
And again, like I said, I mean, looking at it, it's just our call volume's so high. Our call volume's so high that what I do consider a very low responder is 70 to 100 calls a year.
Yeah, but that again, it goes back to that utopia, right? You guys, most departments that have your call volume that are just outside a major metropolis, that all of these things, it is almost impossible to be 100% volunteer. You know, another organization that was like that was Windcrest. They were in San Antonio, basically enveloped by San Antonio. They were completely surrounded by San Antonio, but Windcrest stayed 100% volunteer for a good while. I remember when they went combo, it was a big deal, right? There was this, and they're still combo to this day. But even then, people are like, why is this department in the middle of San Antonio a combination department? Why aren't they fully career and paid? Because they don't need to be.
Mm-hmm.
They've got volunteers who are pulling shift. They're still rolling a truck 2 minutes out of the station on tone out. fully trained, fully certified, fully geared. Why would you want them to pay for somebody to do that somebody is doing it for free? That's keeping your tax dollars down, right? That is meaning your tax dollars can go to something else. It can go to a better apparatus, or it can go to parks or walking trails or God knows what else, right? Absolutely, it can go to anything else. But again, it goes back to you have to maintain that standard. You have to maintain the standard of what it would be like if they did have a fully career department there, and you guys have done that. I commend you guys all the time, and you know I know we've talked a little bit tonight about the 2-year-old being saved and all that, but the reality is, if you don't train properly and you don't maintain a standard, that child is probably perished. Period. I mean, that's the reality, right? Now, that being said, what is luck? Luck is when opportunity means training, right?
Right.
Was there a little bit of luck involved? Yes, right? But that luck is because you had trained on that very scenario 1,000 freaking times. And so the departments out there that aren't doing that, that's where the failure is. That's where the issue is. But you guys have created, and I love that term utopia, because it really explains you guys. You were just in that right spot where you focus on training, you focus on developing your people, you focus on showing them how much you care about them and love them. You have the population to pull from who really cares about the community. Like, you're doing all of the things right in the exact right spot at the exact right time. And these are the things that are hard to line up for most volunteer departments. Most volunteer departments either A, don't have the population, or B, don't have the training, or C, don't have the leadership to do all that. And to put your ego on the shelf. Look, we've talked a lot tonight about leadership, but number one thing in leadership, as far as I'm concerned, if you ask me, the number one thing, and the people are saying, Chief Atkinson, how do you become a good leader? Put your daggum ego on the shelf. That's it. Put your ego on the shelf. It's not about you. It's not about Chief Atkinson. It's not about Captain DeLucia. It's not about us. You want to be a good leader, figure out how to make the people below you better. That's everything.
Have you ever met the battalion chief out of Pearland, Jacob Johnson?
I have not.
His really good, like, ooh-rah-rah kind of guy, good public speaker.
Has a podcast.
Is this the do your damn job guy?
Yes.
Yeah, I do know who that is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's what you were just saying. Like, I mean, when I say like parallels and saddles right up.
Yeah. I've never met him, but I have heard several of his, and actually he's commented on a few of our things. So I know who he is. He knows who I am, but we've never actually met. But yeah, you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Do your damn job.
Just do your job. Understand what your job is.
Yep.
As fire, okay. Really getting on a soapbox here.
Let's do it. I love soapbox.
As fire chief, my job is not to dictate what happens on a scene.
Very true.
It really isn't. Like, and Jesse can tell you this, and it's probably to my own detriment in the long run. I am not a micromanager.
Right.
Like, I will not do that. Now, if I have, particularly my young guys, if they're older, they screw up, they know they screwed up. It is what it is. Okay. But my young guys, no. I'm gonna let them run with scissors in the woods. Okay?
Because they're gonna figure it out one way or another.
And sooner or later you'll hear the yelp, and and they'll freak out about it, and then I'll step in and just be like, look, like, what are you? No, don't do that again.
Yeah,
Don't
learn from this.
Don't do that again. And I really believe that is a big core of this is not just staying in your lane, but actually owning what you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
To a certain extent, empowering the people below you, but let them do it.
Yeah.
Let them do it. Right, wrong, indifferent. If it's not going to kill someone, and it's not a felony, let it happen.
That's an important distinction. If it's not going to kill somebody and it's not a felony, Okay, let them do it.
Let it happen.
Yeah.
Let it play out. Because here's the fact of the matter. It might be your bias that's interjecting on a possible really good idea.
Sure.
You see it as a convoluted disaster and it's probably going to end in tears. What if you're wrong?
Yeah.
And it's actually whatever. It's really successful. It's awesome. It may even make your skin crawl. But if it makes the organization better and it allows you to do your job, everyone's job, the job,
Yeah.
to do the job more efficient, safer, whatever, just pick it. If it, don't be afraid to not mushroom stamp everything. You don't have to be all up in it. It's okay.
I have a great leader that I follow, and he said this: one, be okay letting your people make mistakes, which is exactly what you were just talking about. Be okay letting people make mistakes. Come back and correct it the next day or the next week or whatever, right? But let them make mistakes, because that making of the mistake is going to be a better lesson than you could have ever taught them. The other thing is, be the last person to talk in the room. And to your point, what you were just talking about influencing the thought or the decision, and this was hard for me because I would walk into a meeting and I would sit down and I'd say, okay, guys, this is what I want to talk about. This is what I think. What do you think? Well, what did I just do? Is there anybody in that room going to go? Yeah, is there anybody in that room going to go against the chief? Not if they're smart, right? Yeah, everybody just went, oh, well, that chief, that's a great idea. Let's do that, right? Conversation done. Whereas now I have changed that entire philosophy where I walk in and I go, okay, guys, what do you want to do? How do we do this? What's going on? What ideas do you have? Now, do I already have my own ideas? Of course I do. But if I say them first, I've just influenced that entire meeting, whether I meant to or not. And so I've got to be able to be the last person to speak, and I've got to get them to say, hey, give me your ideas. I want your ideas. First of all, I value them. They're important. You're smart. I hired you to do a job. My assistant chief, I love her to death. She's a young assistant chief, right? As an assistant chief, she's 30 something years old. Yeah. For an assistant chief, that's extremely young, right? And so sometimes it's a confidence thing for her. She doesn't want to make a mistake. She realizes she's young, right? And so she'll come to me and she go, Chief, what do you think about this? And I look at her all the time and I'm like, if I have to do your job, I don't need you. Do you want me to answer that? No, sir. Okay. Go. And if you make a mistake, guess what? We're going to learn from it. We're going to get better. And she goes and she doesn't make many mistakes. I mean, she's solid, right? But that builds the confidence in her to be solid.
It's not even the making of the mistake, right? You can make the mistake. It's how you take that mistake and turn it into
absolutely
and better.
100%.
Well, and part of that, one thing I want to add to that,
it's not a mistake if you learn from it.
Just making the damn decision. There's, particularly as a chief, there's sometimes where it's just, you've got to make a decision.
A decision. We'll worry about the outcome in a minute.
Right.
I got to make a decision because the worst thing I can do is nothing.
There's a point that, and I've been really slowly trickling this into the membership. As chief, we have one responsibility, and only one. It is to make the right decision for the organization. Not the membership, the organization. Because the fact of the matter is the membership makes up the organization. If you're making the right decision for the organization, you're making the right decision for the membership. Who figures out all your documents, your articles, your bylaws, your constitution, SOPs, SOGs? Right.
That's all details.
It's the membership.
Yeah.
They're the ones that ultimately make that up. If you make the right, and you have to make the right decision to the organization. Don't hem-haw around. Make the decision. Well, and that can be a huge problem for people.
The organization is perpetual. You're a blip on the timeline.
Yes, exactly. I say it a little differently with the same concept, and that is our one mission is the community, right? We have to make the right decision for the community. But ultimately that comes back to, which means you have to make the right decision for the organization because the organization has to run for the community. So same concept, different wording, but
the only way I would say that is the organization serves the
that's
community.
100% right.
Make the right
decision.
decision
Yeah.
for the
And if you make the wrong decision, it's okay to go, hang on, that didn't work. Change it because now I got to make it right for the community and the organization. But if you don't make any decision, and I beat my guys over the head with this, the worst thing you can do is nothing. If we show up on a house fire, the worst thing you can do is nothing. We show up on a car wreck, the worst thing you can do is nothing. The city council asks us for some document or some information, the worst thing we can do is nothing. Make a damn decision. Make a choice. Do it the best you can with the information you have. If it's the wrong one, fix it later. But make a choice and move forward. That's all you can do. So,
yeah, it's really important. Your ability to make a decision.
yes,
And not the popular one. In fact, that's
usually the wrong one.
That is the trail of sadness and tears.
Yes.
Don't make the popular decision. Make the right decision.
Yeah.
It's leadership is real easy to listen to. It's real easy to read.
Uh-huh.
It's real easy to see.
So hard to put in place.
It is really hard to actually act out.
Yeah.
And kind of the kicker with that is I would tell you, don't try and mimic someone.
Mm-hmm.
It's all right. References,
of course.
All that reading and watching and learning.
It's more information.
No,
right.
Nothing wrong with that, but don't try and be MacArthur.
No.
Don't try and be Nick Saban.
No, because you're going to fail.
Yeah, because that's not who you are.
Right.
The other part of this, and I mean, we could jabber. I would argue we're probably just now hitting our stride. God damn it. Listen to the people around you.
Mm-hmm.
Listen.
Yes.
There's nothing wrong with listening to city management.
Yep.
Or a commissioner. Or a
rank and file firefighter.
Well, hell, a citizen. Yeah.
Don't get all, and it is, I mean, I'm a little more immune to it because we just get Baby Seal Clubbed on Facebook nonstop. So I'm real used to the constructive criticism. But I realize when someone's actually telling you something. Case in point, us. We still are, and I would still argue still are. We're much better, but just absolutely hammered dog crap at communicating with the public and the value of the organization, the service we provide, and on and on. And I knew that when I took over as chief, and it was a huge thing when I took over as chief. And that is like the definition of like a chiefy job, is that whole PR part and the politics with the city and the county, and disregard the politics and just the relationship.
Yeah.
And realize that it's really important. Like, and I don't care if you're Divine, Terralingua, New York City.
Doesn't matter.
It don't matter.
Yeah.
Like whether you're in a community of a whole bunch of just farmers and ranchers or Wall Street bankers, that relationship is really, really important.
Mm-hmm.
And do not be afraid to take criticism and questions, and don't get ultra defensive about it as a personal attack and that, they're out to destroy you. Go ahead.
Yeah, so the transition of the argument that Granbury should be a paid fire department has gone from the argument of it's better service to you're so good, you should be paid.
Right.
And it's like, I don't know what to do with that.
Right.
I don't know how to process that.
Yeah.
Like,
It's like, aren't helping at all. But thank you.
Yes. You're probably right, but that defeats everything we're doing. So thank you. Yeah. No, 100%.
it's just so obscure that no one's ever dealt with this problem, right?
Yeah.
We're the icebreaker going to Antarctica. We're so far out of what's the norm that who the fuck do we ask
Yeah. No.
advice to,
Yeah.
right? Other than Divine Robinson,
Right.
these guys that are actually trying to do some stuff.
Right.
Like, who do we communicate with to figure out, are we retarded or are we like on track?
You know, I'm a big history guy, right? And in that respect, you're not the first in history to have that issue, right?
Right.
So then you look in history and you go, well, who did they turn to? Well, a lot of times they didn't turn to anybody. They just figured the crap out. You know what I mean?
You just keep
Keep breaking trail because you got no other choice. When you're sailing across the ocean to a new country that you're not even sure exists, who do you ask? Well, there's no one to ask. You just do it. And then you figure it out as you go. And you let the people who write history. And when you decide that you want to break away from another country and become your own country and all this and have a revolution, who do you ask? Well, there's nobody really to ask. You just do it, right? And that's kind of where you guys are at. You guys are at kind of a point where it's like, well, all right, there's nobody else that really does what we do in the facet that we do. Who do we ask? We ask ourselves. What's best for the community? What's best for the organization? And then you keep pushing forward. And I like the fact that us and Robinson and you know, those three, Granberry, Divine, and Robinson, has really we've kind of created this partnership and this symbiotic relationship where we can bounce ideas off each other. But even that, we've talked about these last couple of days. All three of our departments do things drastically different.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because I'm not the size of Granberry. I'm not the size of Robinson. Robinson doesn't have the same resources as Granberry. Granberry is on its own little island, and they can't really ask Robinson or Divine how to do certain things because I flat out tell you, I don't have any idea, right? You guys are on a whole different level than we are. But yet, we still share ideas. We still talk to each other. Hey, did you try this? Hey, have you looked at that? Oh, yeah. Oh, man, I didn't think about that. Yeah, let's look at that. And so I think it goes back to when you have good leaders who are able to put their egos on the shelf and they're trying to find the right solutions, they don't really care where that solution comes from, whether it's a citizen out in the public, whether it's the city council, whether it's another neighboring department, whether it's a department that's not really neighboring but is still at the other end of the state. It doesn't really matter where the answer comes from as long as it's the right answer. As long as it's like, you know what, that moves us forward. Let's try it. That makes us better. Let's try it. And I think that having that mentality is something that we lack in the fire service as a whole. Look, the fire service is big on tradition, almost to a deficit, right?
No, not almost.
Yeah, you're right. Correct. You're right. We're big on tradition to a point where it holds us back at times. And I am again, I'm a history guy. I am big on tradition. We still push our engines back into the bay the first time we get them, all that stuff, right? But where tradition hinders performance and creativity and moving forward, that's a problem. And unfortunately, in the fire service, that's happened a lot.
So if a department discussion's going kind of sideways with me, and I feel like kind of stabbing out, the tradition discussion comes up. I'm like, okay, what's your tradition?
Yeah.
What is it? I mean, you're talking about wanting to make calls, but you're chasing people away.
Right.
You already just, and I've had plenty of people say that, well, the members are idiots or incapable. And it's like, all right, Elmer Fudd,
Yeah.
you're hunting rabbits. Keep going. Just pull the trigger because you need to realize that you're the one that's actually all the problem right here.
Yeah.
And yeah, that tradition. What is your tradition?
Well, and And how far are we willing to go with tradition? When I hear people say, well, that's not tradition. Well, traditionally we would ride horses and wagons and try to put up buildings that way. You want to go back to that? That seems pretty stupid.
Buckets.
Right, with buckets. So the old bucket brigades. Is that the tradition we're talking about? The tradition of having to signal by bells over the community so we know everybody made it back to the fire station. Is that the tradition we're talking about? What tradition are you talking about?
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with respecting history and respecting the guys that paved the way, but the best way to uphold tradition is to keep moving forward and get better so that you can better serve your community. Because all the way back to Benjamin Franklin, who started the first volunteer department 300 years ago before the United States was even the United States of America, right? The idea was we want to do what's best for our community. Let's do that tradition. Let's do the tradition where everything we do is about keeping our people safe and moving our community forward. That's a hell of a tradition.
And that's one thing that's really unique about Granbury. And I didn't create this, maybe built on it. Jesse and Donnie didn't create it. They definitely built on it and enhanced it and refined it. But Granbury's always been training.
Yeah.
And I mean, this goes way, 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 way back. Chiefs that are not only dead, but long dead. That's a tradition for us.
Yeah.
Training. Okay. I can sink my teeth in that one.
Heck yeah.
That one's okay.
Especially up to date, always staying on the tip of the sword, always being forward thinking. That's a great tradition.
And I just, man, that tradition thing, careful throwing tradition around.
Yeah.
Because turns out tradition's really sharp and it's actually really heavy.
Yeah, very much so.
And it's not something that you necessarily want someone just throwing right back at you.
Yes, sir.
Because the tradition, you need to know it. If that's your argument, you need to actually know what your tradition is. No, don't give me that whole saving lives and protecting property. No, goddamn it, that's a motto.
Right.
That's a motto. That's not a tradition. Understand what a tradition is.
Yes, 100%.
So yeah, it's like I said, we are just hitting a stride now. I think we're what, 2.5, 3 hours in.
We're 157 in.
Hey,
we're 2 hours, right?
Hey, that's all good,
like
man.
Rogan ain't got shit.
yeah. Rogan's calling us for advice. No, I'm just kidding. But because it's easy to talk about something that you're passionate about,
right?
And you got three guys that are very passionate about it, sitting around. Now there might or might not be some libations helping move the conversation along, but the reality is this is something we're all three very passionate about. I wish we could have Stephen here. I think if we get the Chief of Robinson here, that'd be great, because I think the four of us having these kind of discussions, they would just fly off the chart. But this is a tradition that should happen more often. And we talk about the tradition of the kitchen table, right? Now, I am still very much a firm believer in that. I will tell you that I have said it that
this whole podcast came out of the tradition of the kitchen table.
100%. Yeah.
That's what this started from.
Yeah.
Conversations we were having at the table. And I was like, we need to record
this. Yeah. 100%.
Sound like two squirrels fighting over a nut.
Yeah.
I realized, like,
this needs to be recorded.
I think other people might find value in it.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because I've heard it said many a times that the firehouse kitchen table, you usually have 4 really good divorce attorneys, you have 3 really good marriage counselors, you have 2 really good bankruptcy attorneys, and we can solve all the world's problems right there at the firehouse table. And there's some truth to that. But what also happens at the firehouse table is this: you really start to sort out some of what is our actual tradition, especially if you have good, again, I go back to leadership because everything comes back to that, especially if you have good leadership in the firehouse. If you have good lieutenants, you have good captains who can kind of guide that conversation and go, okay, you want to talk about tradition, what does that mean to you? What tradition are we talking about? Are we talking about the tradition where we're saving 2-year-olds out of a burning building and we're doing it by using a new thing that NFPA doesn't even recognize as far as VEIS? Or are we talking about the tradition of doing it the way that NFPA said, and we're going in, 2 out, hand on the heel, which we'd have never found that kid and that kid would have perished? What tradition are we talking about?
Yeah.
You tell me, right? tradition is a very heavy word. It's a very undefined word, a very difficult word, because when we start talking tradition, we can't let tradition hinder our advancement of our profession and our career and our jobs, because we still have a responsibility to our community to be the best at what we do. And how can we be the best if we're always looking backwards? We've got to have somebody looking forward. And so, but that takes good leadership. And I think those conversations at the kitchen table are so vital for that very reason. Your kitchen table can make or break a department. And, you know, this is a little unknown fact about us, but Divine doesn't actually have a kitchen table, not for any other reason than we've just never bought one, and we actually eat in our classroom. our classroom, our living room, and our kitchen are all kind of together when it was built. And so we have a bunch of tables in the classroom, and that's where we sit and we eat our dinners at. But even then, we sit them face to face, we talk, you know, we have those conversations. And I will tell you that if you get that green cadet young probie in there and they're sitting there listening to your officers speak, they may not be saying a word, but they're hanging on every single thing that is said. And if your officers are spewing bad information, guess what? That probie now has that they're leaning on for their career. If your officers are spewing out good information,
Well,
they're grabbing a hold of that and they're running with it.
one of the most profound moments in my time in the fire service is, and we invited him here tonight. He can't make it because he had some doctor stuff today, but invited a guy that's definitely my junior. He's in a leadership role now. He's made it that far up, and at one point through history, we were sitting at a table and we were having a conversation, and he said, "You know, you're my hero," and I'm like, "No, that's stupid. You don't know what you're talking about." And he's like, "No, you and so and so and so and so were who I looked up to coming into this." And I'm like, "That's messed up, and now my mind is warped, and I don't know what to do with that."
Right.
But it left an imprint on me that the stuff I say and the stuff I do
Matters very much.
a lot.
Yes.
Because here I am shaping this guy that's coming up, that's going to be the next round of leadership, and already is that. Like he's a assistant chief of a combination department. That he's the EMS director.
Right.
Like he's got some responsibilities and some things to take care of, and I'm literally who he looked up to.
1,000%.
To go into that position.
It is terrifying. It's 100% terrifying, because now when you have that realization, it's like, oh my God, I'm actually responsible for people. Like before you knew it, but when somebody says that, it's that light bulb goes off. So I don't know if so you realize I don't chew, right? I chewed for 30 years. I don't chew anymore. Here's why. I'm on my way to baseball practice one day when I was coaching baseball. On my way to practice. Driving along, whatever. Get a call from school principal. Hey, caught one of your boys with chewing tobacco. Okay, well, we'll handle that. Do whatever, right? Show up. Boom, boom, boom. Go out there. What are you thinking? Blah, blah, blah. And he was like, literally every one of my coaches chew. And you're going to sit here and tell me I can't do it. I'm 18 years old. I'm a high school senior. And I went, you know what? I took the can out of my back pocket. I threw it in the trash. I said, you're 100% right. But I will tell you, as somebody who has chewed my entire life, my entire adult life, right? It started when I was 14 years old. I will tell you that I regret that decision from the day I started it. And I can't go undo it, but you're absolutely right. How can I tell you to do something that I'm not willing to do? That kid watched every single step we made, right? Fast forward, get to the fire department. And I've got these 17 and 18-year-olds that I'm training out of school. And to this day, a couple of them, they've showed up. They've got chewing tobacco, or they've got this new Zen or whatever it is I'm talking about. All right. And that crap is just pure tobacco. That's just pure cancer in a can, but that's neither here nor there. And so I'm chomping on them, and I'm saying, look, you can't do this. And they're like, Chief, but you used to chew. And I said, used to is the key. Used to is the key. I don't do it anymore. And you know why? Because I don't want some 18-year-old kid coming
emulating
it, because I know what it's doing to your body. And I've already had a couple of them throw it in the trash and, hey, I'm going to try to cut off that and blah, blah, blah. But when you make that realization that your words and your actions actually matter and they're affecting people, holy crap. All of a sudden I wake up and we go back to how we started this conversation 2 hours ago, and that is the stress, right? That's where a lot of that stress comes from. It's like, Jesus, I can't, you want, why are you emulating me? Stop. I'm not a good person. Like,
The whole time you're talking there, I'm sitting there thinking in the back of my mind, like, don't take my tobacco or like that's all I have. Don't anything but that. That's all I have.
but that's what makes these trips important, and getting the stress out and all that. And I'm never telling anybody not to do anything. By all means, our firehouse is made up of a bunch of guys that chew and all that. But for me, I'm very big on, I can't tell you to do something that I'm not willing to do myself. I can't tell you don't chew if I'm going to sit there with a big wad in my mouth. I just can't do it. And yet I can't tell these 17 and 18-year-olds it's okay to chew, because I know it's not. I know they're going to hurt themselves in the long run. Not only that, but it affects them. Talking about the fire service, right? All of a sudden, their blood pressure goes up. They're more susceptible to heart disease. So when they're fighting fire, what's the number one cause of death on any fire scene right now in the fire service? Yeah, absolutely, heart attack on any scene. So by them chewing tobacco or smoking cigarettes or all that stuff, they increase that risk and all that. So we go back to the fire service. I can't tell you to take care of yourself and then show you how not to. That's the wrong answer. And so for me, I just couldn't do it. And but it goes back to that very conversation you were just talking about, Jesse, which is, it didn't dawn on me until I realized how much my words and my actions mattered. And somebody is always watching. And it's like, boy, it's like the first time Smokey Bear told me that, only I can prevent forest fires. That's a lot of responsibility. I don't even own a forest. Like, that's tough. All of a sudden, the weight of the world is on my shoulders. I can't do it.
You're right.
The firehouse talks. So I used to spend a colossal amount of time at the station.
Yeah.
And as chief, I don't spend as much time there.
I get that.
And it is intentional.
Yeah, sure.
Part of it is we'll call it the reverency of the table, the talks, and
how can they speak freely if I'm sitting there?
Right.
Yeah.
And the other part of it is that sometimes you walk in the middle of a conversation, and of course, I come trundling in the door, and they all act like that they just killed someone.
Right.
And it's like, where's the body?
Right.
What? You were having a serious conversation. Go ahead. Continue to have that. And they're like, no.
Nope. You just walked through the door, Chief. Nope. That conversation's done.
And
yeah,
it's it is a culture thing. And I would argue along the lines of everything that we're talking about, you're the chief, you're not their friend.
100%. I agree.
Remember that. And also, quite frankly, goes back to what you were talking about earlier about letting people go. To be a little graphic here, it's a lot easier to go pull the trigger on Old Yeller if you don't have this really deep emotional friendship
right
with that individual.
Correct.
And I'm not saying don't be friends, and I'm not saying I'm just saying
you have to keep a professional decorum relationship.
You got to remember your job.
Yeah, 100%.
You got to remember that you are there to end that Disney movie.
Yep.
That's part of the job too.
Yep.
And you can't. There's one time, and I assure you, it's the only time that it'll ever happen. So it's unfortunate for everyone else. I made a terrible, terrible, terrible mistake as a chief. I made a decision based on a friendship. When I say that I should have, I should have been burned to the ground off that. The difference is that generally well liked by the city, by the county, by the membership. I screwed that up beyond belief. It was strictly based off of a friendship.
Right.
And oddly enough, making that decision based off of a friendship, that friend burned me to the ground, and I was in the house. There was no escaping it. The end result of that is that that person also got the wrathful end of a chief.
Yeah.
And that's also not good. Really not good. And let me tell you, at the back end of that is after literally getting burned to the ground and surviving it. And I should have, arguably. Unfortunately for that individual, I turned around and knew how to work every facet of the articles, the bylaws, and the SOPs. And when I say fell on them like God ending the world, that was the end of it. Here's the problem. I took full liberty in my ability to get rid of this person, and I knew it was wrong, but they needed to go. Like,
right.
This needed to happen, partially because of wrathful vengeance on my part, but because, again, damn it, you haven't been making the right decision for the organization.
Yep.
It has really, really screwed you, put you in a compromised position with the city and the membership, and it's time to end this.
Yep.
And for lack of better words, I looked like a fat Moses coming down Mount Ararat. And I was done. And I fell swoop, boom, boom, in, out. That person had no leg to stand on. Don't care what your point is. I just executed you.
Game over.
So you can either take it and go out on top, or I'm telling you, done.
Yeah.
And bouncing out of the back end of that, I changed the rules so I could never do that again.
You know, it's so funny that you say that, because one of the questions I ask everybody that comes in our department is this question right here. Which is more important, integrity or loyalty? Because here's the thing. I'd fire my own wife. I'd fire my own mama. Loyalty is only as good as the person you're loyal to. Integrity never goes out of fashion. Your integrity is the only thing you have. So I don't care who you are. Here's the thing. I'm going to love you. I'm going to care for you. I'm going to take you in as part of my family. We're going to break bed together. But the second I can't trust you, the second we have an integrity problem, you're gone. Period. End of conversation. And you know, there's a reason that the fire service is still the most trusted service throughout the world. It's because we build our departments around integrity. We're called when grandma is at her most vulnerable. We have to be honest, trustworthy people with good integrity to be able to do our job, because we have full access to the city pretty much anytime we wish, right? So we have to have good people to be able to do that. Loyalty isn't a bad thing, but loyalty is only as good as the person you're loyal to. And if you allow your loyalty to have you make bad decisions or decisions that aren't in the best interest of the organization, then loyalty has now become a problem. Integrity has never been the issue. If you keep your integrity, and if you go by the rules and you go by the integrity and you go by this, in my opinion, you can't make a mistake. I've never found a situation where integrity was the wrong thing. And so I tell everybody up front, I will hug you, I will take care of you, I will guide you, I will give you the shirt off my back, as long as you have integrity. But the second you stop having integrity, the second you stop doing the right thing, the second you try to twist it, manipulate it, change it, you're dead to me. It's over. Because I'm not going to compromise the department or the community for anyone. My wife is by far, she has a master's degree. She's smart. She's wonderful. She's amazing. She's a master instructor through the United States Navy, all this stuff. Highly intelligent, right? We went toe to toe one night in the bay of our department. No one else was around, but she had gotten offended because I overrode her on a decision she was making for one of our classes. She's one of our lead instructors. She's the number 2 for the assistant chief as far as in our academy and all that. But she made a decision that was going to jeopardize our academy, and I overrode it, and she threw a fit. And I did not look at her in that moment as my wife. I looked at her in that moment as an instructor who had tried to get an uprising against the chief. And I'll be gosh darn, we're going to go by the law of the land here. We're going to go by the SOP in the book. And so I took her into the bay, and I started out explaining to her why the situation was wrong. And I finished by telling her, if you ever make me have this conversation with you again, you won't be here. That's my wife, right? Let me just tell you, that does not go well at the house.
No.
All right. That is not good for husband Greg, right? But I don't care. When it comes to our community and our department and our organization, if the second we lose our integrity on what we're doing, we no longer are able to do our job effectively. And luckily, because she is a smart woman and she's wonderful, she understood that. There were some tears. She did cry a little bit, but she calmed herself down. She understood. And once she understood what I was trying to do, she was like, no, you're right. You're absolutely right. And I was like, I know. That's why we're having this conversation. That's not egotistical, but this is what I do. This is my job. This is my lane, right? I stay out of your guys' lane a lot. You guys make decisions, and I will say I'm out of your lane a lot. But this is, in fact, my lane. And I don't care who you are. If you get in my lane and you're not doing it right, I'll run you over, because that's what needs to happen. And so I have been very upfront about that. And have I lost friendships over it? 1,000 times. I just have. A lot of people are like, oh, and I always, this line gets me. I thought we were friends. Well, that was your mistake. See, one, you thought that we were so much friends that I was going to lose my integrity over this. That's not going to happen. You thought we were so much friends that you would be able to manipulate or twist this. That's not going to happen. You thought because of our friendship, because I was kind to you, because I showed you that I cared, that you were going to be able to do whatever you want. But the reality is, no one is above the rules.
Right.
No one, self included. If I break the rules, I deserve to be let go. Because at the end of the day, it's about the greater good of the organization and the community. Period. So that's my take.
That's the only thing that matters. It's the only way you're going to find success.
Mm-hmm.
It just is. And it doesn't matter if you're just this little itty bitty tiny itty bitty ranching.
Yep.
Grass fire only.
One truck.
Yep. Handful of car accidents a year.
Yep.
It's okay. And
it does, yeah. Right? It doesn't matter. It's the only way to get it done. It's the only way. Because it all hinges on that relationship with the community. Mm-hmm.
And add some levity to it. There's a real popular song that came out in the 90s that doesn't say F the fire department. There's a reason that song's never been made.
Yeah.
And it's because at the end of the day, there's truly just one image and one association with being a fire department. Whether you're volunteer, combo, or paid, don't matter. You get to wear the cape.
You're FD. That's it.
You're in like Flynn on that. And don't get me wrong, the community will be understanding. They get it. If the fire department had to drive an hour and a half to get there,
sure,
they get that. But they still expect you to show up.
I think sometimes I know there are those in the community who, don't necessarily always have common sense as we would see it, right? But for the most part, most of our communities are very understanding. They're very forgiving, right? Even if we make a mistake and we own it, they're like, okay, well, we understand how that happened. Just fix it going forward. I mean, most communities really understand and back their fire departments greatly, and I think that goes to it's funny you brought up that song, but it goes to, we have built an industry based on integrity. Our brotherhood is real. our brother and sisterhood is very real. But to be a part of that brother and sisterhood, you better have your crap together.
Well,
You better have integrity. You better be a decent person.
Firefighters have it's really weird. Okay, fire and EMS have this one weird connection with I'm going to call it their environment just to make it melodramatic. So one of the most vicious, ruthless, absolutely world-ending creatures on the face of this earth is a newborn's mother, and they will defend that thing to the end of time. Okay, if something's wrong, firefighter shows up, they literally just give the baby
Yes.
to the firefighter, and they're like, "It's broke, fix it."
Yes.
Okay, and like I hate to say it, that there's not many other people that get that benefit.
Yeah.
Let's just kind of go down the list. Like a school bus driver is not going to get that.
Yeah.
They're generally well liked.
Yeah.
Firefighters get that really rare interaction.
Yep.
Because usually, if some random stranger just goes up and picks up the baby, they get stabbed in the face.
Correct.
Or shot.
Mother starts beating them profusely.
Right.
Yeah. But
much less walk away with them to an unknown vehicle.
Correct.
Okay. And here it's highly encouraged and supported and expected.
Yeah, almost wanted.
Right.
Yeah, take my child and go.
And even leave
Yeah.
with the kid.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's kind of a unique thing. And because it's unique, there's, I'm going to say, a certain amount of given expectation with that responsibility.
So much, yes.
And it's not fragile, but it can be world-ending if you screw it up.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter if your career combo
No.
paid in that given scenario.
Yeah.
And there's just a certain point there where it's not the good old boys club. It really doesn't matter how much training you've had, and to a certain extent, experience. They're expecting an action, a physical action.
Yep.
And that it has to happen every single time.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be flawless. I've seen some pretty incredible bedside manner that gets excused either just through the nonchalantness of saying that it's stressful, to they're new.
Right.
And it gets forgiven because of who they are. But there was still action. And that's a big part of this that gets overlooked, not considered enough, not given enough credit.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe worldwide, except for outside of Seattle for whatever reason. So
Poor Seattle.
But yeah, it just is. It's one of those things where the community has an expectation, and you need to. Unfortunately, you have to hit a home run every time, and very rarely do you actually get the opportunity to hit it.
So my last, as both of you know, I used to be in law enforcement before I started in fire. And my last call in law enforcement, we got called to a domestic dispute, which is one of the most dangerous calls you can go to in law enforcement. It's obviously one of the most heartbreaking calls you can go to in fire and EMS. And so me and my partner show up, and husband is choking out mom. Kid is watching from the room. And so we take husband off, we put him against the wall, we're cuffing him up. While that's happening, the wife is yelling at us, "That's my husband. Why are you being so rough?" This is the same woman who was just getting choked out by her husband, right? and we're cuffing him up to take him away. Fire department shows up and it's like treating her wounds, and she's like, "Oh, you guys are my heroes, and thank you for being so gentle and helping me." And I was just like, I literally just saved your life. But the perception of law enforcement versus the perception of fire and EMS, because fire and EMS has done a great job of telling our story and all the things we've talked about in this podcast and having that integrity. And law enforcement on the other side hasn't done a great job of telling their story. They've had some people that haven't made good decisions. And so they've gotten kind of, now I still think it's completely unfair that they've gotten completely beat up in the press, but that entire, you're exactly right in the fact that the stigma and the perception around the fire department is drastically different than that. If law enforcement showed up at somebody's house in the projects knocking on the door, mom's probably not handing the baby over to them.
No,
that's not happening. But let that fire truck show up out front, knock on the door, and go, "I need your baby." They're okay, what's wrong? As they hand the baby over.
They might be at the wrong door.
Yeah.
It's still handed over.
Yeah, exactly. But that's it, right? They trust you so much that they're like, "Okay, but my baby's fine. Why do you need them?" Oh, wrong baby, my bad. And that'll be forgiven. You can go get the right baby.
Right.
But it's because of what we've built in the industry as a whole. And I go back to, it's important to do that at the very lowest level, building that in the individuals, building that in the organizations, building that in the company, building that in the, because then that is what gives our industry the backing that it has so far. Guys, this has been a blast. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, we've gone long in the tooth. We're rivaling.
If you're listening to this, feel guilty, damn it.
Steven, you should have been here. It'd have been a blast. On the next one.
Could have been 4 hours.
Yeah.
Right. What did we get to?
2.5. We're at 2.5.
Well, there you go. That's a couple episodes for you.
No, it's one.
That's one episode. Hey, yeah.
No, we rival Rogan, but yeah, this interaction, this exchange, is literally what this is about.
Yeah,
it's what this podcast has been about. It's the fact that we can talk about these things that don't get talked about. They aren't expressed. You end up in this role and you're supposed to just know this.
Yeah.
Like it's the divine intervention.
Right.
And we're not all from divine, so we can't do that.
Let me ask you, last question. I know we're trying to wrap this up. Last question. Do you guys ever get imposter syndrome?
Oh, badly.
Do you?
Oh, I literally feel like a cartoon character.
It was funny because I got the opportunity to talk to Chief Frosto the other day from she's the new chief in San Antonio. God bless her. She's amazing. But she even she was like, it's surreal. Like, I never anticipated being here. And now the responsibility is so massive. And I'm like, I can't even fathom that because I'm thinking about little old Divine, right? I got one station. Yeah. I got 10 trucks. I got 50 people. We service 133 square miles. I can't even fathom being the chief of San Antonio Fire and all that encompasses. But I still feel just like, am I good enough? Am I the right guy? Is it, so.
Unlike y'all, I've had a lot of years being in the upper leadership of a department.
Sure. I mean, you were there when Moses put out the bush. Sure.
I did.
Yeah.
And I've grown somewhat past some of that imposter deal, but
sure.
It's right there.
Yeah.
It's right there. Like you have no idea, scrolling through all the Facebook stuff from last week with that rescue, how many tears I've literally shed.
Oh yeah.
Reading the comments, reading the posts, just like it's sat in my office with my phone and just wept.
Yeah.
Because it's so much not about me.
Yeah, exactly.
It's so much not about me.
Exactly. That's exactly right.
And it's this pride thing that just swells up from the pride of,
I get to be a part of this.
I'm a part of what these awesome people did.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My analogy is nowhere near as awesome as that. I literally feel like a clown standing in the corner of the room, rocking back and forth in my big red clown shoes.
Well, you're
smoking a cigarette. I mean, it's just like
your analogy earlier of the dog at the end of the table. Sometimes I feel like the dog, and not because anybody's making me feel that way. Sometimes I'm just like, do I really belong at the table?
Yeah,
And
Yeah, it should be begging for scraps.
yes,
Side.
yeah, exactly. And you know, and then we watch, and then I watch our department do, and don't get me wrong, I have 1 degree, I'm working on a second degree, I've got all these certifications, I'm, you know, all that. I know I'm qualified to do the job. I know we have been successful, and that's not what I'm saying, but it's still very surreal because I know who I am as an individual. You know what I mean? And I'm thinking, I'm no better than any of these people that are here. Any one of these people could do the job. Now, whether they'd want to or whether, you know, that's a different story. But why me? Why am I the lucky one that gets to be in this spot? And you know, and that's why I think that's one of the things that keeps me humble is the fact that every time somebody pats me on the back and goes, "Oh, Chief Atkinson, you're doing a great job." I'm just a simple country boy from Indiana. Okay, I don't know much about much, and I have a great team around me. My one claim to fame is I can build a good team. That's it. That's what I do, and then the team takes over from there. And that is my one. I'll own that. I can do a good job of building a team. But once the team is built, I don't really do much. They do it all, and I go to these meetings and I get on these, you know, I do these press releases and all this stuff, and I'm just like, man, who am I? Right? Who in the world am I that I get to come on and I get to talk about leadership and I get to go and I get to, you know, stand and talk in Austin at the Capitol building. I'm I'm just a simple country boy. I'm just a schmuck. I'm just the country boy from Indiana, you know. And so I thought that was interesting. I talked with Chief Baker, who's the chief in Austin, and I asked him the same question. I said, "You ever get imposter syndrome?" And he goes, every call, every day, like I don't think there's anybody worth their salt in this position that at some point hasn't went, how in the heck did I get here?
Yeah.
And I honestly, there's a part I brought that up to say I think that's kind of a part of the leadership too, right? I think that's a part of the humbleness that it's like if you don't have that, I think there's kind of something wrong.
Mm-hmm.
There's that part of you should be thankful and humble enough to go, look, this is bigger than me. I didn't do this. Was I a part of it? Yes. Was I a piece of it? Yes. Did I help? Yes. But I am not this. This is so much bigger than me that it blows me out of the water. And sometimes that's consuming.
It's I was I won't mention the department. I was a big department that I sell stuff to. And we were having this conversation, but it was a little different. And I told him, I said, from my perspective, this is literally what I feel like most of the time. We have the circus. It's
Mhm.
just, there's a lot of acts, there's a lot of stuff going on. I really hope the elephant doesn't trample into the crowd. Okay? I hope
There's so much truth to that.
I hope the lions don't just go unhinged and just kill everyone in the cage.
I'm hoping this isn't the show that the bike flies off the rail and kills everyone.
And I said, here's the problem, and it is on volunteers. It's the volunteer problem. I can't guarantee tomorrow.
Oh yeah.
I can't. And we train. We run a tight ship when it comes to the act.
We can play the law of averages, right?
Right.
Yeah, but at some point those averages run out. I mean, it's an average, right? So there's got to be somebody on the other side of it.
So our only job at that point is to hedge our bet,
Mm-hmm.
to make sure we're doing things to make sure that continues, that average holds true.
And our bet hedge is on our automatic mutual aid.
Yeah.
That's the real key in volunteer and success. And that really is emphasized in this rescue. It wasn't Granbury that just did the rescue. There was another department. And the fact that they did this really complicated rescue and pulled it together when it mattered is where the hedging of the bet happened.
Right.
How do you parlay or insure the hedge? Simple. You make sure everyone's trained.
Mm-hmm.
Around you. not just you.
Yeah.
Right.
You don't just
Right.
train yourself, you train everyone around you. So that all of a sudden, yeah, part of that circus, it turns out that uh, that act over there, you, you did that training. It's their own show.
Yeah.
It is, but it's part of you. And there's just a lot of value in that.
So when the elephant does leave the arena, the guy with the tranquilizer gun's ready to drop it on the ground.
That's
So-
usually but that is the chief.
Yeah. Yeah.
That is the chief.
So I'm gonna just close out with this one thought. So when I was training captain before I was assistant chief, my lieutenant, who is still a training lieutenant, as soon as this rescue happened, I called the training captain. I said, "Good job, right? Good job. What you have done made this difference. Good job. Thank you." So a little bit later, I see the lieutenant, training lieutenant. I told him, "Good job. Thank you. What you did made this difference."
Yeah.
And I did that not for me, but for them to
Yeah.
understand,
That's so good. That's solid stuff right there.
like you made this happen.
Everybody in the chain made this happen, not just the
Right.
two guys. Yeah.
And so I'm scrolling through because I don't know if it's gluttony or what, but I'm looking through all these comments and all these posts, and it's mostly just validation, right? It's
Right.
that imposter syndrome that we were talking about. And I'm scrolling through this stuff and I see that lieutenant's post. And it's this tear welling, just emotional post about how that made it all worth it.
Yeah.
All the sacrifice, all the time he spent doing all the classes, teaching all the stuff.
This one save made
This
it worth it.
one made it worth it.
Yep.
And it was just like, fuck, he gets it.
Yep.
Like, it went full circle for him, which put it back full circle for me, which made it all the 25 years of dedicating all my free time to doing this. That made it worth it.
100%. That's awesome.
Yeah. Well, Matt, you want to wrap this thing up, put a bow on it?
No, but we should. Really appreciate you coming down.
Well, appreciate you guys having
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's adds good insight and perspective and just makes it a little more entertaining, and also appreciate the theatrical casting. If you ever have a question for the Divine Fire Chief, you can find him at
chief at divinefire.org. Again, chief at divinefire.org. You can also check us out on TikTok. It is Divine Fire and Rescue, all one word, Divine Fire Rescue. You can also check us out on Facebook, Office of the Divine Fire Chief, Office of the Divine Fire Chief on Facebook. And Instagram is also the Divine Fire and Rescue, Divine Fire and Rescue. You can check us out on any of those. But an email, real easy email, chief at divinefire.org.
Excellent. If you ever feel like poking at It Tastes Like Burning, you can find us on Gmail at ittasteslikeburningcast at Gmail. You can find us on YouTube at ittasteslikeburningcast. And you can always give us a subscribe or a lick over there on Patreon.
Yeah.
Appreciate it, guys. If you hung in for the long haul, you're probably need a hobby. But good luck with that.
Thanks, guys.
Good
Bye-bye.
night.